my friends, and welcome to another Watch with Ray / Page to Screen. This is our first video page to screen, so it's not just Watch with Ray, it's Watch with Veronica and Ray. So fuck yeah, we
It's
doing
actually
this?
just watch with Veronica and listen to her tell Ray about it. Because
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Because Ray didn't actually watch
story
this.
time. Story time with Veronica.
Story time.
What are we covering tonight?
So tonight we will be covering Queen Charlotte, which is the offshoot of Bridgerton on Netflix.
Nice.
Yes. Now, there's a lot. We will get into it. And we're just going to dive right in because, again, there's a lot, right? And it's a Sunday night. So first, for some context, this is something that low-key blew my mind when I figured it out, or when someone on TikTok explained it. So we're talking about King George III and Queen Charlotte. King George III is indeed King George from Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
Same dude.
Okay.
So this is the period of time when America was breaking off from England. Not necessarily like the exact time that the show is taking place. Like that's not discussed. I guess technically I could look that up. When did they get married? Hang on. When did George and Charlotte get married? September 1761. So this is like quite a few years prior to the Revolutionary War.
Lots of big hair. Lots of big wigs.
So much big hair. Everyone's wearing a white fucking wig except for George in all of his goddamn glory. Just some context.
These people. These actors.
Oh, you definitely should.
Is there a lot of sex in this one?
Should. It is not season 1 level of sex, but there is sex. It is a closer return to season 1. But I will say, major difference from season 1 is that we don't see a single boob.
Really?
No boobs. There are quite a few man butts, but there is.
They know their audience. Yes,
they know their audience. But there's no boobs. Every time, like there are actually a couple times when they're showing a sex scene with 2 different characters, actually, where the women have like it's not like their full dress necessarily, but like a nightcoat.
Their stays, probably. Their stays.
Yeah, something like actually it's
the corset is a stay.
There's more. It's
more
like
than that?
More draped than that. So like there's it's almost like a house coat. Like you know how sometimes they would like, or like a cover for like their nightgown or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like it's that basically.
Banyan. For men, it was a banyan.
Oh my god.
Thanks, historical romances. What?
So there's less nudity than in season 1, but more than season 2. And for timeline purposes, this occurs after season 2, probably before season 3, and definitely after book 2, probably before book 3, because definitely because there's a jump between like book 2 and 4, and you said that like 3 and 4 kind of happen at the same time. There's like overlap between Benedict and Colin's timelines.
Yeah. Yes. Some. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's definitely there. It's specifically mentioned in this series that Anthony is on his honeymoon. So we're not long after season 2 at this point.
Okay. That's how it starts.
It starts not long after season 2 because we know at this time that that Anthony is on his honeymoon. Because Violet says so at one point. None of the Bridgerton children are in this. However, the I believe Daphne and Simon, like 2 of their kids are playing with Violet on the floor at one point. It's like it's a quick, just like establishing kind of
Okay.
shot where Violet is on the floor playing with these two little kids. One is like a baby, so probably the second one is still pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
Some context as to what we're really, as to like who these people are in the grand scheme of the royal family. Charlotte and George, she is German, by the way. She is from Mecklenburg. So this sort of like, she was 17 when they got married, which for
Well,
that
the
time
actress is
period,
21 years old, so she's really young.
that, I mean, yeah. And they make her look pretty young. Like I've seen interviews with her and she looks young, but like she definitely looks young when she is dressed up as Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlotte and George were busy. They had Charlotte was pregnant 15 times.
Mm-hmm.
They had 13 successfully grown children. Like they only lost two back in that day, like late 1700s. They only lost two of those babies. So they ended up with 13 children. The ones that ended up carrying the line down, Edward married Victoria, and their daughter became Queen Victoria. So Victoria and Albert there, like that's how
Yeah.
we have gone down that line. The other thing that is clearly a massive topic of discussion, not only in this series, but also in season 1 of Bridgerton, which of course comes into play during season 2, is like what is going on with George. There's
Right.
clearly something wrong with him. Like something's not right with the king.
Right. Well, there is actually a movie called The Madness of King George. That's kind of what this is about. That's about.
Yes. So I've not seen that movie, but what I did do was look up like what was this? Because there was certainly the first time that you see like an episode kind of happen, to me it looked like a panic attack.
Well, question, because I thought it was something.
Oh, it's more than that. It's
It's
definitely more than
syphilis,
that.
is it not?
So that could be, however,
Yeah.
okay, so
Well,
just to name a few of his ailments, King George suffered from abdominal pain, sometimes had seizures during which his attendants would need to restrain him by sitting on him. His urine was blue, which was likely caused by a medication he took called Gentian Violet.
mhm.
There have been a lot of rumors about what it was. However, psychiatrists now have they've characterized this as like possibly bipolar disorder because he would like talk nonstop and write nonstop,
Mhm.
and they see that as like a symptom of a manic episode of bipolar disorder. Um,
Oh, okay.
so like there's like, and then once the euphoria and the hyperactivity resolve, then like the person becomes very depressed. And there's it says the idea
Oh,
that George is from PBS, by the way. The idea that George may have gone through manic periods also matches the late 18th century descriptions of his illness described by actual witnesses. He would talk incessantly, even as one court observer wrote, until, quote, he was exhausted, and the moment he could recover his breath, begin again while the foam ran out of his mouth.
yeah. This one is from the BBC. It called it pro profaria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a thing. Several other experts in biochemistry and metabolic disorders heartily disagreed with this diagnosis. However,
Mm.
this caught on like wildfire.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
even like this person says, while taking genetics as a first year medical student, I recall my professor supporting this diagnosis. So that's like widely thought to be accurate. However, that's also been disputed. A 2005 hair analysis found high amounts of arsenic.
Ooh, so it might have been poisoned.
Might have been poisoned. So like, but it would take like, I mean, I don't know, wouldn't that be like consistent poisoning? Because this was not like a short term thing. He
You
was
give
like
them
this.
enough. You can give someone enough just to slowly kill them. But
That's
depending
great.
on when he started showing symptoms. Um, yeah, that's wow. Okay, well, I mean,
So all of this is background in hoping to understand like a little bit of, they obviously in the late 18th century like did not have the medical
Oh.
knowledge that we have now, and they didn't have the treatments that we would have now. And that unfortunately led to probably some really shitty treatment for him. Um, However, I will say that during this, the show, I am certain has taken a significant number of liberties. So I I I don't even know that it's very possible to determine like what is accurate and what is not. Um, but we do know that George behaved erratically, um, and that there were certainly times when he was not healthy and times
Mm-hmm.
when he was healthy. And when he was not healthy, he would remove himself from the public eye and would be secluded at Kew Palace, which is something that is discussed heavily in the show. So, however, and again, something else that is discussed heavily in the show is this says each time he retreated from London, a constitutional crisis arose. Who would make the decisions ruling England?
Mm.
A national debate over whether to make his son the de facto
Regent.
leader came up,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that is also discussed in the show. And eventually, I believe that that is what happened.
Sorry, they're fighting behind me.
Oh, that's nice.
Get out of here. Go.
Okay, so at any rate, that's basically like just context, just to get us started to understand like what it is that we're diving into here. Okay. All right. We open up the show with Charlotte basically overhearing or over like kind of spying on her brother. Her brother's name is Adolphus. Basically spying on her brother, like signing a contract. And she knows exactly what it is. She knows that he has just signed her life away to marry someone. And
Cool.
like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, she does this on purpose. She gets angry and like shoves a statue over and breaks it.
That tracks. That tracks with the character.
That tracks. Yeah, it does track for that character, right? So oh yes, it says she knocks over a huge bust. I support it.
Yep.
I didn't get the quote, but it's done so impeccably well. She's in this carriage with her brother. Like I said, she is from Germany. They're from Mecklenburg. And something that I would say the show, this must have been a conscious decision for them, but she does not have a German accent and neither is her brother.
I was about to ask that. Yeah.
And like, I was kind of like, but wouldn't you? You know, like you grew up there. You lived there. Like, you know German. You know,
no,
and like,
no, it's
and yet,
just like it's just like every historical movie. Like they just everyone speaks the British accent because things. I mean, from like the beginning of like film until like recently, they're like, yeah, maybe if it's Greece, we don't need them to have British accents. They can have Grecian accents, like, but speak with
yeah. That part was a little odd, but that had to have been a conscious choice on their part.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because we're talking about like you and I in our discussions of the first 2 seasons, we discussed how like, is this historically accurate that we have a black queen? No, it's definitely not. Are we glad that they are like modernizing something? Yes, it's great.
Well, however, isn't Charlotte? Well, isn't Charlotte historically, wasn't she the first black queen? Isn't that when we had that discussion with EL that she was sending messages, through us through Instagram? I'm pretty sure that's what we were talking about. That she was actually
really,
and I heard it afterwards. After we were like, this is not, it's fine that it's like, because people were like, this is true, and we're like, come on, girls, and it actually was true. Let me just double check.
Really?
She was Yeah. Queen Charlotte, 1744 to 1818, wife of the English King George III, was directly descended from Margarita de Castro y Souza, a black branch of the Portuguese royal house.
Oh, fascinating. So like she has
She's
excuse me.
biracial.
Okay. Okay.
So it's not too far off because I remember when that was like the big thing is when the first season of Bridgerton came out and people were asking, is this historically accurate, and because obviously it plays with the casting, which I think is fantastic,
Oh
but
yeah.
this in this instance it is correct.
Oh, fascinating. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so then that is interesting because it that being more historically accurate than I initially thought
Mm-hmm.
adds credence to a lot of these storylines. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So
which is really interesting that now if you look back at like you know um all of this crap that's going on with currently with
mhm.
the royal family, and you're like, but you guys know that at one point you did have a relative, an ancestor that was black. So
And I looking at the they're not photos, but looking at images of paintings of her,
mm-hmm.
keep that in mind. We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So she is in a carriage with her brother. Of course, they have to like cross the English Channel. Like they're in a carriage. They're going to Buckingham House, and he is saying to her like, "You have not moved in 2 hours. Like you've literally not moved your body." And she describes. I recommend you watch her describing it because I will never do it justice, even if I had the quote. But she's like kind of reclined and is
Uh-huh.
just very still. Like it's like she's slouched in her seat, but like she's clearly like spine is straight. And she is talking about the fashion and what she is wearing. And she's talking about how her corset is made from whalebone. And she said, so the problem with whalebone is that it is, while extraordinarily rare, is also pretty fragile. So if I were to move too quickly or like something were to hit me and this whalebone fractures and breaks, then it could literally kill me.
Yep.
So, forgive me, but I am trying really hard to not move because
To
you
not
think
die.
it's important that
Yep.
I get married to this person. And of course he is like, I let you read too much. Anyway, Adolphus has, I'm sure, redeeming qualities, but is also a dick.
He
Easy on
sounds
the
like it.
ojos. Yeah.
Oh, I was
Um,
didn't. Oh, dang! I have that window closed. Okay, keep going. I'm gonna look him
um,
up.
he is saying like, no one gets opportunities like this. Like the like race is coming into the discussion. No one
Mm-hmm.
gets opportunities like this. You will marry the King of England because it is good for our country economically, and because someone they always say like our side, their side. It's very much like drawing that delineation between black and white people, and
Mm-hmm.
saying like our side can benefit from this. So he's basically like, you're doing this
But like
regardless.
they're using that, but they're also meaning like Germany and England.
Yeah, yes, in this specific context, but not later.
Right.
Like,
Like
because
historically, that's what they were meaning. But like in this context, they're
in
meaning
this
racist.
context,
Racism.
they're meaning yes.
Or
And
yeah.
of course, there's the economic impact that he is also discussing because it's important.
Mm-hmm.
But um, the when it is discussed as our side and their side for the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
show, they are absolutely talking about race, and
Got it.
there's no question about that. Um, so there's a lot of like timeline cuts, like from
Mm-hmm.
present day to flashbacks. We're moving around a lot in that regard. So when we're joining the present day timeline, Queen
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte's their oldest child, George the Fourth, his wife has passed away during childbirth. So now there is no heir past George. Like
Okay.
their hopeful next generation, there isn't one. You know, like Queen Charlotte is now at this impasse where her son George is essentially like acting, he's the Prince Regent, I think.
Regent. Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, there is no one. None of her 15 children, none of her 13 children have children. So there is no one. And they're all adults. Like, this is, you know, unheard of. Like, none of the women have children, and they're all spinsters at this point. And
Yeah.
so she's freaking out. And she's like, you guys need to get your shit together. Get married, have babies, stop. Now, mind you, at one point she says, I have 50 illegitimate grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the other thing that when we were talking, we were chatting. This was the other thing El said too. Yeah.
So, like, you know, get it together, marry someone that
Put it in your pants and keep it there.
keep it there until you marry a respectable lady who will give me grandbabies.
Right. That we can actually say, this is my grandbaby.
Yes. And she is harsh on them. Harsh on them. And so anyway, it's like I said, we're opening up with like, do you remember in season 1? I had forgotten this until tonight, really. In season 1, there is a scene. It's probably Brimsley who comes in to get her, and she gets like very alert, and she sits up and she says, "Is he dead?" And in that moment, we don't know if she's happy, like she's hopeful that he's dead, or if she is concerned that he might be dead.
Right.
So that same thing happens tonight, like in present day, where like someone shows up and gets her out of bed, and she meets them at like the front door, and it's some messenger, and she's like, is he dead? What is going on? Someone clearly died. If you are getting me up at this hour, what is going on? And it is that her daughter-in-law has died in childbirth. So Georgie is just inconsolable, and he is just like loudly sobbing, and she just goes, sorrows, prayers. Like, that's how she consoles him. Sorrows, prayers. It's fucking hysterical because it's ridiculous. Like, that is not how you console someone who is sad that his wife and child just died.
No.
But that's how Charlotte does it. So,
I mean, did she always like? Well, you're gonna tell me. I'm assuming.
I am.
How she got to this point? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because from what I saw of the trailer, she wasn't like this at the beginning.
It's yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So of course, like Lady Whistledown is like, the big question is like, can Charlotte actually matchmake? Because that is the big question right now, is that Charlotte needs to marry off her children so that they can give her an heir. So that's like the proposed question for present day Bridgerton, or present day Queen Charlotte timeline, I guess. Okay, so jumping back to flashbacks, we are introduced to Brimsley, who is they call them like the Queen's man, the King's man. It's like essentially like their personal assistant, valet, like that person who is constantly with them.
There's like lady of the whatever, lady of the yeah.
There's that too, but like this person is always there. It's like more so than the ladies that are getting them ready and like dressing them and stuff, because Brimsley is there with her constantly, and he is constantly 5 paces behind her. That is the line, is that he is always 5 paces behind. And of course she's like, that's weird, why are you not walking with me? And he says, because I'm always 5 paces behind you, always. And when there's a moment where she is irritated with him and is running essentially like away from him, and he is like running to keep pace with her 5 paces behind, and she makes some comment about like, I guess it's just me and you forever, Brimsley, or like something annoying like that. And then like it cuts present day back to him following her 5 paces behind. It's quite cute. There's a lot of that going back and forth between present day and the flashbacks, like with how some things have just never changed. Okay, so George's mother, her name is Augusta. She is a cunt. She's just absolutely fucking terrible.
And FYI, I'm pretty sure she was a cunt on a Game of Thrones too, if I remember correctly. She was, yeah.
There's a little bit of explanation for that later, but like she's terrible. She is terrible. When Charlotte comes in and meets her, literally Augusta like licks her thumb and like tries to wipe on her skin. Like, what? You didn't tell me she would be so dark.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what? But knowing that Charlotte, literal, like real Charlotte was biracial, it sort of lends credence to that, right? Also at this point, her brother has just abandoned her. Like, he just leaves.
Awesome.
Which is nice. Okay, so now because like there's all this debate between Augusta and Lord Bute and then some other dude who truly I didn't fucking care about. They have all this discussion about like, can we cancel the wedding? The wedding is like, she has arrived just in time. The wedding is like today or tomorrow. It's very quick. Right. And so there's this discussion of like, can we cancel it? And they're like, no, we cannot cancel the royal wedding. She is here. She is going to marry him. And so they decide that this will be called the Great Experiment.
Great.
And this is where the their side, our side stuff comes into play. And and Augusta says, now that like, we have to make this look intentional. And so we need to invite people from their side to the wedding, so that it looks like we have done this on purpose. This is a united front. This is a united England. And so essentially they send out like this wedding is hours from now. They end up sending invitations to like literally anyone with like any kind of melatonin in their skin. Like, is that the melatonin?
Hey,
is that
we didn't want you before, but now we want you now.
Melatonin is thank you. Sorry. Melanin, like any kind of like melanin in your skin. They hand the invitation to some Asian woman. Like, it's just literally like,
hey, anyone. Is it a tan? Is it a tan?
Are you tan or are you black? Like, just
here's an invitation either way.
Here's an invitation. Please just come. They're inviting anyone who is not like classically white. So
cool.
Then,
I mean, yes, awesome, but I mean, an hour before, I'd be like, what do I wear?
Yeah, and that's one of the arguments is like, do you really think that we can get people here in time? And Augusta is like, it's a royal wedding. Do you really think they're going to say no?
Well, that, and I'm sure they were probably already going to be standing out, watching it anyhow.
Yeah, might have been. So then we cut to a scene where a couple is having sex. The woman in bed is bored and staring at the canopy like above them on the on the bed.
Think of England. Yeah.
Think of England. There is an older man straining above her. And when he is done, he rolls off of her, says, "That was a good ride," and then takes his teeth out. Puts them on the nightstand. And let me tell you, the misophonia, like that, like the ear, like sensitivity.
I have misophonia. Yeah.
Yes. Like they play that up because it is fucking gross.
Oh, mouth, like wet sounds make me want to vomit.
Yep. And let me tell you, like, it was not pleasant.
Kissing in movies, sometimes it's so wet it makes me want to vomit a little bit. Like,
Yep. And he says,
can I guess who this person is?
If you'd like.
I'm gonna guess it's Augusta's husband.
Oh no, he's dead.
Oh, okay, got
it. This is a black couple. I don't know if that gives you any additional clues, but I am about to tell you. He says, "You may nap here, wife, and then I have a surprise."
Awesome.
She waits for him to fall asleep. It takes approximately 8 seconds, and then leaps out of bed, meets her lady's maid outside, and immediately takes a bath. Like, this is a routine that they have, that whenever she has to have sex with him, that her lady's maid has a bath waiting, because she's so grossed out by him. And he's clearly much older than her. Like, she
Right.
has
I mean,
4
that's what
kids.
happened. Yeah.
Right. She has 4 kids, which we found out later. But, like, she has 4 children with him, and it's, I would say she might be in her mid to late 20s, probably closer to mid 20s, because I think her
It's
oldest son
Lady
is.
Danbury, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And it took me a second, but, like, I wrote above all of this, I wrote, OMG, this is Lady Danbury. But yes, absolutely, that's where we are. Yeah, so anyway, and also there's, like, a warning system set up where, when, like, the lady's maid literally is just like, okay, I've got it, like, puts water on the fire to, like, warm up the bath and stuff, because she just don't, like, she's repulsed by her husband.
Oh, well, right.
And her husband is also a terrible person, as we will continue to learn.
Great.
I mean, he not like an abusive situation. He's just a dick. Like, he's just not nice to her.
I'm looking at pictures of this actress, and she's really pretty, and she's got an awesome sense of style too. Yeah,
she's beautiful.
IRL, yeah.
IRL. Okay, so then we go back to Charlotte. Now, when Charlotte was meeting with Augusta said, we have to get you fitted for your wedding dress. And she says, oh, I brought my own. It was made by blah, blah, blah in Germany, whatever. It should be to your liking. And Augusta is like, well, we'll want you in, like, a more traditional English style. So we have a dress for you. We'll get you fitted. So Charlotte is getting fitted for this dress. It's simple.
Again, hours before her wedding.
Yes. It's simple. It's like nothing to write home about. But it's still Victorian-ish age England. It's beautiful.
No, this is Georgian.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So she's asking questions. She is getting fitted for this dress. There's people around her. And of course, Brimsley's with her, because Brimsley is always with her. So she's asking questions about George, and no one is fucking answering them. No one. They all, like, dodge the questions or say something else. No one will tell her anything. And he's like, I'll always be with you. I'm here all the time. And she goes, I need to use the chamber pot. Will you be here with me for that too? And so then he, like, clears everyone out of the room, and she's alone. We get images of people filing in for the wedding ceremony that essentially looks like it's segregated. White people on one side, Black people on the other side. The queen, the Dowager Queen, Augusta, walks into the church, directly stops in front of Lord Danbury and Lady Danbury, and that's when she makes them Lord and Lady Danbury. Essentially, because she wants this person to be a lady in waiting for Charlotte. Okay. And so she's like, you have to be titled in order to do this. So you are now Lord and Lady Danbury. He is obviously super excited about this. And she's like, cool, whatever. And she is like, damn it, I'm going to have sex with him more often. Like, essentially, like, that's like, because he's going to be happy about this.
Yeah.
Brimsley then is, like, running around. He's seen just running through rooms. Clearly something is wrong. He stops to talk to Reynolds. And Reynolds is like, what is your problem? And he says, well, the bride is missing. That's the problem.
He's like, 1, I have a rap named after me, and 2, the queen is missing.
Okay, so then we cut to the scene that is probably all over everyone's social media feed, which is Charlotte trying to climb over the wall.
Yep.
George comes up behind her.
Such a charming scene. Yep.
It is so charming. It's so adorable.
And we meet George.
Yes, we finally fucking do. But there's this really beautiful moment, and I didn't write down everything he says. But so he obviously, like, interrupts her and is like, can I help you with something? And she's like, you can help me climb over this wall is what you can do.
You can give me a boost.
You can give me a boost. And he says, like, what, why? Like, what's going on? And she basically is muttering like he's clearly a beast or a troll or something. And she still hasn't even turned around to look at him. But while she's like kind of muttering to herself and trying to like figure out, she's looking around, like turning her head and trying to figure out how she's going to get over this wall. And you can see the moment that George falls in love with her. Like there's just this
Oh.
beautiful scene where like she's turning her head and like you can just see like this beautiful, it's not, I mean, it's not really a silhouette. It's just like it's her from behind looking. So it's like a profile view of her and like her neck and her gorgeous gown. And like you can just see his face just like change. And
Oh.
he says, you know, I have no intention of helping you go over the wall because you're just trying to escape marrying me. Of course, then she tries to apologize, calls him Your Majesty. And he says, he takes her hand and he stops her and he says, George, to you, I'm just George. And he's like, what do you want to know about me? And she says, everything. I want to know everything about you. And like I said, I didn't write down everything that he said,
Mhm.
but he says sweet things like I'm a pretty good shot, and I really like science, astronomy in particular. I enjoy farming and like things like that. And he says, regarding the king stuff, accident on birth on my part, I was hoping you could ignore that and I could be just George to you. He is
Oh.
so charming and so sweet, and they have immediate chemistry. I mean, it is like not only Charlotte and George have immediate chemistry, but the actor and the actress, so good together from jump. Like it's just really beautiful. Of course, at this point, like her brother finds, she's like, where have you been? And then I find this interesting. He sees George and knows immediately who he is. But most people kind of don't. Like she doesn't know what he looks like
Hmm.
because he's pretty reclusive. He
Hmm.
doesn't like, he's not social. He doesn't go to social gatherings. Like he's just, I don't know. So anyway, Adolphus knows exactly who he is and immediately is like, I'm sorry, you know, whatever. Charlotte's so excited to marry you. Like he, George goes, um, I he goes,
That's a lie, but
I'm pretty sure she's still deciding. And Adolphus is like, oh no, she's quite excited. He goes, no. She is still deciding. And it is her choice. She can decide whether or not she goes through with this. And he says, I do hope I see you in there, though. So, of course, then, like, he leaves them. And the next scene that we get with her is her walking down the aisle. Her hair is different. Her gown is different. She changed into her gown that she had
oh,
brought from
good.
Germany. Her hair is like
Yeah.
all poofed out and fucking
I
beautiful. And she has
saw,
this like
yeah.
this gorgeous like tiara that like sits in her
Mhm.
hair and goes up. It is so amazing.
And it's, like, on the pictures on everything.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It is
I
absolutely
mean, it's
stunning.
huge. I love it, and it's so
It's
huge. It's
massive.
its own zip code. I love it.
Yes, it's incredible. Um, I would love to know, like, I assume all of that is wigs because I
Oh,
don't
I'd assume.
understand how they would do that otherwise. In the
Well, 'cause, I
interviews that
mean,
I've
that
seen
would've
with that
been
actress, she
yeah.
has like long hair that she had like
Mhm.
in dreads or braids or like something.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
wasn't paying that close of attention, but like I in the videos that I have seen of her, she has like long hair, but I doubt that
No,
this is
I
what
would
it
assume
became.
yeah, to try to I mean, and that was the norm anyhow, was to have the wigs, so,
Hmm.
um
Right.
except that it's interesting, like, they would have put her in a powdered wig, but
Right. Right.
which
Um,
always blew my mind. I'm like, "Why would you want a I mean, like, why did they want powdered wigs back then? I don't
I
know
don't
why they didn't want
know.
the white hair. It was a Parisian thing that kind of, like, the fashion just, went,
Blended
all of
over.
Europe, yeah.
Right.
I don't think it came over here too well, like,
Uh,
not didn't it didn't catch on over here as much as it did over there.
I think pre I mean we see George Washington and Jefferson with like the white wigs
Yeah,
on, but I don't think
yeah.
it lasted much longer than that.
No, no.
So the wedding sequence happens. It's really cute. They get these like they're both sneaking glances at each other. It's very sweet. The entire wedding sequence is quite beautiful. Like, I mean, this is still Bridgerton, you guys. It's still gorgeous, like
Right.
absolutely gorgeous. We end up getting an instrumental version of Halo from Beyonce. And then after the wedding, um, he says, I have a surprise for you. They get in their carriage, and he takes her to her house, not his house. He doesn't live there. He lives at Kew. She will live at Buckingham House.
Oh, okay.
I think at Buckingham, or maybe it's whatever. She's
Yeah,
staying
yeah.
at this one place, and he will be staying elsewhere. And she is like, but we're married, and this is our wedding night. And she goes, I don't know what's supposed to happen on a wedding night, but aren't we supposed to like be together on our wedding night? And he goes, you wish me to fulfill my like husbandly duties or something like that. Like something
Yeah.
like that. She's like,
You want me to rail you tonight?
right. And she's like, I guess I don't even know what that means, but like, shouldn't we be together? This is our wedding night. And
Can I
mind
stop you for
you,
1 second? I
yeah,
want to. So I just finished a book that I have to review, and in the book, the guy was like, they got this couple. It's a historical, and they got married, and he's like, so what did what did your mother tell you? She's like, I know pretty much the biology, and she goes, my mother said it would be enjoyable. He's like. He just like his mind is blown. It was the first time I read this, which I was like in a historical. He's like, I wish that the women in this country would tell their daughters specifically what is happening. He's
yeah,
like, the men don't know what that your husband won't know exactly how much you know and how scared you are. And we're just going off of that, but it's kind of like it was like, yes, thank you, sir. Yes.
yeah.
It would be really helpful if they did, were more like this is what happens when you have, like when you get married.
More is going to come into play there, and I
Okay.
think you'll like it. Okay, so they kind of like have this argument about, is this what our marriage is going to be like, where I'm here and you're at Q? This seems weird. I don't like it. He's trying to get back to Q, like just at the fucking speed of light. He's really trying to get out of there. And he says, she's like, why is it like this? And he says, because it's easier. And she says, for whom? And that's when he yells, I decide I am the king. I decide I am the king. And it is fucking heartbreaking because in that moment, like, he has said to her, for you, I am just George. And in that moment, she's like kind of stands a little taller and says, my apologies. I thought you were just George. And then she starts calling your majesty again and like curtsying to him and things like that. And it's heartbreaking because like she clearly is really upset and so is he. He's mad
Well,
at himself for yelling at her.
is this part of like the manifestation of his mental issues
I
also?
don't I mean, it could be looked at that way, but I don't think so. I think he's frustrated because she's not just like bowing to him. She's headstrong and
Mm,
and is she's Queen Charlotte as you know her in quote present day. She is
mm-hmm.
strong and but also confused and young and thinks that like she thinks she's done something wrong or
Right.
that he doesn't like her. That's not the case. We find that out in a couple episodes. Like we get an episode that is this day essentially, but from his point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see like different aspects of the day and in the following days. But she is just like, if you have nothing else to say to me, I'll
I'll bid you
I'll
adieu.
I will take my leave. And he turns around and he walks out the door. He just says it's for the best and he leaves.
So he's gotta like he realize at some point, I'm sure you're going to tell me, that he's gotta like woo his wife, he's gotta court his wife at some point.
Um, it, later.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
This is when this is when she says to Brimsley, because she's super irritated now. She says, so we'll spend the rest of our lives together. And then of course it cuts to him like walking 5 paces behind her in present day. So from there, we just kind of get some like establishing things at the end of the episode. The matchmaking process of that Charlotte has always been running is now an internal process for her. And young Charlotte is laying alone in this giant bed, and she says, "I wish I'd gone over the wall." Episode 2. Of course, because this is the time period of where we are, the question of whether or not they have consummated the marriage is already a topic of discussion. Augusta says that when she married her husband, George II, there were, I believe, the number was 14 people witnessing the consummation. But she's like, things are different now and they want to give the couple privacy. But of course, it's still a question. And she is like, we need to know if they have consummated. Lord Bute in his fucking asshole face is there and like up in everybody's business. Have they consummated? Have they consummated? Because they are honeymooning and he is at Kew and she is at Buckingham House. So how are you consummating this marriage when you're not even spending time together? Which of course is like, that's going to get leaked to the people. Like they're not together.
Well, I mean, because the servants probably have already changed her bed sheets and know that there's no, because that's what they're looking for. They'd be going and looking for bloodstains.
Right. But because she is at Buckingham House and he is at Kew and like the Dowager Queen isn't there, like there's people are like, how do we know what's happened? And
I mean, 10 to 1, everyone knows already that they haven't because servants talk.
Right. So, we get a montage that is truly depressing where we see Charlotte getting up every day, getting dressed, eating alone, dressing for lunch, eating alone, what she's trying to fill her day with, getting dressed for dinner, and eating alone. She is seen in the library getting down books, like she's reading about astronomy because he likes it. It's really like, it's sad, really sad. And she is clearly wondering what the fuck she was thinking. Eventually, she demands to go to Kew. Brimsley, and at this point, I didn't know his name, so I just kept calling him the blonde dude, but that's Reynolds. Step indoors to warm up while she goes to the observatory to see George. We get it's hot. They step inside. The two of them start making out hot and heavy real fast. We see a flash of man butt. Sexy things happen. But it's not like super graphic at that point. And they're basically like, how much time do we think we have? Like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then like when cut to like him coming out, like they really do only have like 15, 20 minutes. Like the next time we see them, like they're both kind of separately coming out of the front doors and like making sure they're all like straight with their overcoats are all straight in, like buttons are all buttoned and stuff. But meanwhile, Charlotte is she goes to see him in the observatory and he has a giant telescope and lots of like papers and notes and stuff. And there's like a twin bed in the corner. He's living in the observatory. And look, he loves astronomy and is like mapping out the skies and stuff like that. Meanwhile, she is in there and she's like, I am 7 and 10 years old. I have been removed from the only place I've ever known. You are the only person I know here. And you don't want to spend time with me. So what have I done that has made you not want to spend time with me? And he says, I don't want to fight with you. And she says, fight. I do. Fight with me. Fight.
Fucking bring it. I will fight with you. Yeah.
But she says, fight with me. Fight for me. And he tells her to go home.
Wow.
And
this is such a change for the guy that didn't want her to go over the wall. That's why I say, I wonder if this is the manifestation already.
I don't think so. And I'll explain why as we go.
Okay.
Because of this, the next episode we get that's more from his perspective.
Okay.
So Brimsley and Reynolds are called into Augusta. and she's basically grilling them, like, have they consummated the marriage? And the two of them say yes. The two of them lie and say yes, they have consummated the marriage. They're quite happy. Leave them alone. Charlotte remains super lonely. In the meantime, Brimsley and Reynolds will like meet in some garden somewhere to like exchange information and be like, Brimsley's like, he needs some gesture. Like he has to give her some kind of gesture to make her less fucking miserable. She's so lonely. So he sends her a gift. It is a tiny dog that she calls a deformed bunny. It is a purebred Pomeranian, which Brimsley then like later tells her, like, this is a purebred Pomeranian. It is rare. And he
I
has
see a
gifted
picture of
this
it.
to you.
So,
You see
my
it?
God, that dog is fucking adorable. I want dog.
But she's from Germany, and she goes, that is not a dog. Dogs are Danes, or like, and she names like a few other large breed dogs. She's like, that is a deformed bunny. The note he
Oh my
provides,
God.
though, is very sweet. And the note says, I never want you to feel alone. Of course, then she
Fucking come
finds out.
visit her, bitch.
I know. Of course, then she finds out that the gift is a fucking dog, and she's pissed. She literally just
Oh my God.
hands the dog to Brimsley. She's like, absolutely not. I know. He has a basket that he stays in. It's fucking hysterical. I know. But it is little. I mean, it's like, you know, it's so funny though, because you'll see it's a point of amusement on the show, because Brimsley will be like walking the dog, but they're walking so quickly that the dog is struggling to keep up.
What is the dog? What did she eventually actually give it a name?
I think the name eventually is Pom Pom, because he's Pomeranian.
Cute. Mm-hmm. Cute. Okay. Yeah. Right now, the highlight of the show is the dog.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, a lot of other things, but for me, it's like that fucking dog. I want it. Anyhow,
I get it. So then she decides like it's time to call on Lady Danbury, and Brimsley advises her against visitors because he's like, you're on your honeymoon. It will look weird if you have people visiting you. Mm-hmm. But he's like, I will never tell you what to do. However, I will tell you how to do things that you want to do in a more proper or discreet manner. And so he says, perhaps you could call on one of your ladies in waiting, and perhaps that person could be Lady Danbury. Mm-hmm. So she comes in, and essentially Lady Danbury is like, you know, she has a terrible experience with sex where she does not enjoy sex with her husband, and is just literally lying back and trying to think of England until it's over. So she's essentially
in and out.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so she is kind of like talking to Charlotte about like, you know, how did that go for you? And Charlotte, they have not consummated the marriage. Charlotte does not know how this works. She has no idea.
Is she like truthful with her?
Yeah, eventually like Lady Danbury kind of gets that out of her, and she's like, I don't know, you know, and whatever. And so Lady Danbury is like, okay. She gets up and she rings a bell, and Brimsley comes in, and she's like, I need paper and charcoal. And she fucking draws her pictures.
She diagrams it. I love it.
She diagrams it. She draws multiple different positions. It is absolutely, yes. I mean, it's everything that we wanted Violet to do for Daphne. It's like, it is so fucking brilliant.
Thank you, show. Yeah.
It is so brilliant.
It's our year of sex cards, but in charcoal form.
Yes, and also this reminded me of something that happened in episode 1 that I didn't even like at the time. It didn't really ring any bells. It made me laugh, but I didn't really like stick. Present day Charlotte, when she's yelling at her 13 children who have not given her an heir yet, she says, she's talking to her daughters, and she says, I know that you ladies know how this works. I drew you pictures. Are you sure that do they know that they're putting it in the right place? Like, it's fucking hysterical. But like in that moment, I didn't really think anything of it. But then like Lady Danbury drew her pictures, and so she drew pictures for her daughters.
You know, honestly, maybe they need to come back. I don't know. Maybe. Well, actually, We're trying, but it's getting cut out of school, so it doesn't matter. Anyhow.
Yeah. So they have like this whole discussion, and she's like, how many times does he need to insert it? It's really, really amusing the way that they talk about this. But Lady Danbury is concerned that the marriage is not consummated because of them and us. Our side, their side. Your marriage to George is not finalized. You are not technically his wife because you have not had sex with him yet. And she's like, you need to consummate this because, like, for all of us, not just for you, for all of us. So we end up flashing back to the present, and I just started calling her Queenie in my notes, but Queen Charlotte is talking about her 50 illegitimate heirs to the throne.
QC.
QC. That is later she becomes QC. But in the meantime, back in the day, Brimsley and Reynolds are talking about Lady Danbury's visit because that word is starting to spread around. In fact, Lady Danbury is then called into the Dowager Queen, Augusta's place, so that she can ask about the tea with Queen Charlotte and ask what they talked about. And there is a brilliant moment when Augusta keeps calling her Agatha. And Lady Danbury interrupts her and says, Lady Danbury. My name is Lady Danbury. And it is fucking awesome. Just amazing. So Lady Danbury is trying to kind of leverage her husband's good mood, like trying to make her husband remain in a good mood, essentially. She's trying to, like, not blackmail, but like convince the Dowager Queen to provide more perks, essentially, to Lord and Lady Danbury now that they are Lord and Lady. And the Dowager Queen, for her part, wants information out of Lady Danbury. So Lady Danbury essentially agrees to, like, spy on the Queen, although she kind of never really does. She doesn't really pass any information that is, like, any kind of, she's not really private. But she agrees to it because what she wants from the Dowager Queen is, like, a house and land and
what usually come with the title.
Including for her husband to get invited on the hunts with the other gentlemen, because he's being refused at this point, which puts him in a shitty mood, and then he comes home and bangs his wife. And invitations into whites, because he's being refused entry to whites. At this point, so, like, and she wants, like, I want to be able to go to the opera and, like, blah blah blah. So all of that is part of her leveraging. If you want me to pass information, you have to do a few things for me too. At this point, George finally shows up for dinner with Charlotte, and she's pissed. And she fucking leaves. Like, she walks in. He's sitting at the table, and she's like, "Hello," and he's like, "Hi, Charlotte. I thought I would join you for a meal." And she goes, "A meal, a meal," and she fucking storms out of the room. And he chases her, and he's like, "I know I have given you no reason to like me. I marry you, and then I put you in a house, and I leave. But if you will just give me one evening of your time, I think you might hate me just a little bit less." And so she agrees, and they have dinner, and then he takes her back to Kew and shows her his observatory and shows her Venus, because Venus is, like, you know, he found it and is, like, coming into view and blah, blah, blah. And in a few days, this thing is going to have whatever, blah, blah. He apologizes for his behavior. And she says, "I do not forgive you yet." And he's like, that's hopeful for him that she said yet. There's a cute little kiss between them. And she says, "Does this mean you're coming home to Buckingham House?" And he says, "Yes, this means I'm coming home to Buckingham House." So at this point, like, finally they're going to consummate the marriage, right? How weird is it that, like, your maids are getting you ready to have sex? And then you,
Yeah,
like, parade down the hallway to your husband's bedroom.
that's so it's really funny. Like in all those historical romances, it's always the guy comes to the hero always comes to the heroine's room. But yeah, it's always the maid. In fact, again, this last book that I read, he's like, "Do you want your maid to get you ready?" Or and she's like, "No, you can do it." And to me, that's super hot. Like, no,
For
you can do it
sure.
for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. But
yeah.
yeah, like, so she walks down his room. Um, and in the meantime, so the door closes, right? And Brimsley and Reynolds are standing outside the door. And Brimsley says, "Might you like a refreshment after your travels?" It's so funny the way that, like, the two of them use code. I mean, and they would have had to, but, like, it's so funny the way that they have they've woven that in. So back inside the room, he says to her, "You are breathtaking." And she talks about, like, she says, like, it's pretty. She's talking about, like, her garment or whatever, but she says, I'm afraid I have made a bad choice because there are 1,000 tiny little buttons. He says, "I'm very good with buttons." This scene where she loses her virginity, though, is quite beautiful. Like, they did it very well. There is, like, it's him on top of her and you see, like, man butt and thing, like, but
Okay.
it's not particularly overly graphic. It's not, like I said, not love, season 1 Bridgerton, but it's quite beautiful. And at one point there is a moment when, like, he clearly is stopping to ask her if she's okay and waiting for her to say, like, "Yes, I am," before, like, resuming.
Mhm.
Um, it's quiet, like, you don't really hear their dialogue, there's music and whatnot, but you can still tell what's going on. It's very, very sweet, actually.
Mhm.
Um, and then, of course, Brimsley and the valet and, Reynolds have sexy times too. Um,
Yay!
yay!
Sex time go around.
Woo! The
That
Danburys,
is, do we see man butt on that one too?
I don't remember at that particular moment. We see if there's, like, a few scenes with them. None of those are, like, there's no thrusting involved with any of their
Damn it.
scenes. I know.
Okay.
Um, but they're cute. They're so cute, the two of them. Um, the Danburys get their house, their spots for the boys at Eton. Um, she tries to, like, this is what I mean by the fact that, like, her husband's a dick. She'll try to say things like, um, "This is really great. And I think," and he goes, "Stop talking. I'm going to go see if the key works." He's just a fucking asshole. Um, okay. So morning after they finally consummated this marriage, Dowager Queen, of course, rolls up and she's pressing him. "Did you consummate this marriage?" And because of course she's concerned about the great experiment. And he gets very terse with his mother. He clearly does not have a great relationship with her. And Charlotte overhears this discussion with the two of them. He essentially says, "You have told me to charm her, to make the wedding easier. I did, to the best of my abilities. You told me to take her to bed. I did. I have done that. You have told me that I cannot let her know me, that I have to protect the secrets of the crown, and I have done that also." And he says specifically, "I live for the success or the misery." I forget. I have it written down later. I live for the success or the misery of this nation, and you've never let me forget it. And Charlotte overhears this and thinks, like, he doesn't care at all about me. All of this is for
Right.
show. And so she
Right.
storms off, and it's just like
Third act breakup. Yep.
at that point, like, they we'll get to it. They cut to a scene where Queen Charlotte is in the present, and she has, like, so many Pomeranians around her. She has tons of Pomeranians in present day. Regardless, so then the Dowager Queen leaves. Reynolds makes sure that the Queen is gone, that the Dowager Queen has left the premises personally, comes back to check on George, and at this point is when we first start seeing his illness manifest. So
Mm.
this is when I said, like, at first it sort of looks like a panic attack at first. When this scene happens, he kind of like collapses into a chair and he can't regulate his breathing, and is clearly like in physical distress.
Mm-hmm.
He Reynolds says, "Do you want me to fetch the doctor?" And initially he says no, but then he says, "Yes, fetch the doctor." But then Reynolds is leaving and he says, and George says, "Charlotte." And Reynolds turned around and says, "She'll never know." It's not that at this point his illness is not affecting his behavior toward her in any other way than, I don't want her to know about this side of me because I wasn't allowed to tell her, and that wasn't fair to her because she is forced to spend the rest of her life with this person who is broken. Like, he really views himself as like a half of a king, a half of a person, because he's okay sometimes and not others. And he doesn't want her, first of all, he doesn't know that he can really even trust her at this point. Like, what if she finds out and then like tells everybody? Because if they declare
Right,
me
and then
insane, then I will lose the crown.
right,
And there's no one
and there's no
else.
one. Yeah,
So like,
yeah,
what
yeah, yeah,
happens, um
yeah.
he wants to protect her, and to some extent he's protecting the crown. Like, he does not
Right.
want anything horrible to happen to his lineage, but also I don't think he wants to see the judgment from her that he thinks he's going to see.
Got it.
um so episode 3, it's coronation day.
Okay.
They're not
Is this where
speaking.
we see from his point of view or no?
I know I said that was episode 3, and now I'm wondering if it isn't. It might not be.
I see. I've got the episodes pulled up. Um. Oh no, I think
Oh
it's
no, it's
4.
4.
Holding the
It's
king.
4.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so it's coronation day. They're not speaking again because she is fucking furious with him.
This is called Even Days. Okay.
Yes, it is, and you'll know why. So thank you, because I actually meant to pull all that stuff up, but I don't have my second screen, and so therefore I'm paying no attention to like IMDb at this point.
I got you, girl. I got
Thank
you.
you. Each episode, by the way, is like about an hour, although there are a couple that are like an hour and 15 minutes. The last one's like an hour and a half. Okay, so Brimsley, there's this moment where Brimsley is downstairs, right? And he runs into Reynolds and he's like, "What are you doing down here?" And he then accuses Reynolds of having, quote, another rider. Yeah. And Reynolds is like, "That's ridiculous. I'm down here on an errand. I do not have another rider." Okay. And at that point, Brimsley turns around and a door opens and he sees the king being checked out by a doctor.
Right.
And at that point, Reynolds looks at him and he's like, "You saw nothing." So it's clear that Reynolds knows all of these things about the king that the rest of us don't yet know, and Brimsley does not yet know. And he's essentially saying to Brimsley, like, "You cannot tell a single person. You cannot say a single word, not even to Charlotte." So then we get this, like, it was confusing at the time, but once I knew what was going on, it made sense. We meet Violet Bridgerton as a girl. Violet is not out yet. She's not like had her season or whatever, and her last name is Ledger, Violet Ledger. Violet is already protesting her mother's bigotry. Like, her mother very clearly doesn't like Charlotte because she's black, and it's just she's
Wow.
supposed to be one of Charlotte's ladies in waiting, and Violet is very much against that and speaks that to her mother. Her father is very kind with her, and she does something cute, like he calls her Beauty and Brains, and it's just cute. Like, he'll say like, "Hi Beauty, how are you?" like something like that, and then she'll say something, and then he'll say, "That's beautiful Brains," or he'll "That's wonderful Brains." It's very cute. It's very clear that the two of them have a great relationship and that they're very close.
She looks like I'm looking at her name is Connie Jenkins Grigg, and she looks like the hell's her name?
She looked kind
Ruth
of familiar.
Gamel. Yeah, she looks like Ruth Gamel.
Okay.
I'm looking at some of the young versions of these kids,
Mhm.
these people, and I mean, they did a really good job casting.
Yeah, they did. They really did.
Yeah,
Especially the ones like, young Violet, old Violet, like old quote. But like you can see, like with Lady Danbury in particular too, you can see the
yeah.
resemblances, even though there is no like they're not related, but like you can see that this actress could potentially be this actress, but like, 40 or 50 years prior.
Brimsley, especially.
Yes, I thought so too.
Yeah.
I thought so too. Um, so anyway, Violet's dad seems like a lovely person. We're gonna get more of him. Um,
Lord Ledger.
Lord Ledger. Um, Present day, Charlotte's daughters are like squealing about the fact that they have embroidered a bedspread for a dollhouse that looks just like the one at Q. Um, and Charlotte is like, "What is your problem? You are not. This does not make a baby. Go make me babies." She literally says, "So many spinsters, so little time." Um, Back to flashbacks. Lady Danbury is basically pretending to pass along info to Augusta, but it's not. She's
Uh,
not really giving her anything that's worth any kind of,
mhm.
value.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, we get a shot of after the coronation. Charlotte says to Brimsley, "Clear the corridors." And essentially what she's saying is like, I don't want anybody to see that my husband and I cannot stand to be in the same room together. And so they turn around to go back into Buckingham House and drop their hand, like immediately drop each other's hands as soon as the door is shut, and then walk forward. And then when they get to like the hallway that splits to go down to their rooms, like they just immediately start walking away from each other. And Brimsley and Reynolds stop together at the juncture where the two of them split off, and one of them clears his throat, and the two of them stop walking. And that's very clearly like a sign that they use for the rest of the series or the rest of the season rather, for when one of the men, one of the king's men or the queen's man needs to say something but doesn't want to because they're probably speaking out of turn. So the two of them stop, and I think I forget how this exactly that started, but like they essentially are like, we should be trying to like make a baby.
But yeah, get
And
them together. Yeah.
right. And but they're both like, no, I don't want to. And so they just keep walking the other way. And then Reynolds clears his throat again and they stop. And she says, "We did agree to even days." And he says, "I suppose we did." And so she turns around and she goes to his bedroom because it's an even day and they have agreed to have sex on even days to try and like, so that they at least have their odd days free. So she gets, here's the thing. They have so much hate sex. It is like, she says to him, he says to her, "The sooner you're with child, the sooner I no longer have to view your face."
Holy shit!
Or maybe she says that to him. The sooner I'm with child, the sooner I no longer have to see your face. And he says, "The sooner I no longer have to hear your voice."
Oh my god!
They're so mad at each
This
other.
is what we needed in season 2, man. This is what we
very
needed.
Much like, this is very much an enemies to lovers situation here. But like she's in amidst all of this, we're seeing Charlotte at tea with Lady Danbury, and she's talking about like Lady Danbury is like, "Oh, the act is so awful," and Charlotte's like, "Yes, it is." But then in the meantime, like you see it cut to her like not having an awful time because even though she's
having a pretty great time,
she's having a great time, and like they're breaking shit. Like
there's a shot in the trailer where he's like fucking banging her on a table, like
that's
from
later,
behind.
but yes, that happens too. But like
Yeah,
this is like in his bedroom, and like there's just they're like throwing shit. I mean, it is some intense, passionate hate sex. And he does not understand why she is so mad at him. He does not understand like what switch has flipped here because he does not know that she has overheard this conversation.
Oh.
Um,
Okay, can I stop you for 1
yeah,
second? Is this like a cliffhanger? Will there be a season 2?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. Based on how it ended, I doubt it.
Okay. Okay.
They
Alright.
wouldn't need it. I should say that. Um, the that does happen. Like, there's basically a montage of them hate fucking each other. Then like the dinner thing happens. Brimsley and Reynolds like clear everyone out of the dining room because there's like footmen everywhere. Um, they're talking about engagements. The Queen Charlotte asks Brimsley, like, what engagements will we have? Like, I think the honeymoon period is technically over. Like, what can we go do?
Mhm.
And he's like, the king doesn't do social engagements. Sorry. And at that point,
Right, nothing.
like nothing.
Yeah.
And she says, why not? And he says, honestly, I don't know. And then like accidentally lets it slip that he saw the king with a doctor the morning of coronation day.
Brimsley.
Yeah. And she's like, what doctor? And Brimsley is like, oh, nothing. And she tells the other servants to fucking get lost and like grills him about what's going on. Okay, so then Brimsley, Reynolds finds out that Brimsley let it slip and he gets pissed off. Again, man butt, because sexy times have just finished for the two of them. On one of the even days, they finish up and they're both getting dressed. And she asks him, by the way, he stands up full naked back.
Nice.
Yeah. Happens a few times.
I mean, nothing will compare to Jonathan Bailey butt, but
oh, nothing will ever compare to Jonathan Bailey
butt biters
butt biters.
anonymous.
So they're getting dressed and she's like, I heard that you saw a doctor the morning of the coronation. And he says it was the morning of coronation. The crown has to be examined the morning of coronation. And
oh, did he lie and say it was the morning of the coronation? Because it wasn't, was it?
It was the morning of coronation.
Oh, the coronation. I'm sorry. I think I was thinking wedding. Sorry.
Oh yeah, anyhow, no, the coronation. And he says the crown has to be inspected. Or
that's actually a good, quote unquote,
it's a pretty good lie
excuse.
Yeah. And she says, I wonder why they didn't want to look at me. I'm the one that everyone is concerned about getting pregnant. You'd think that they would also want to look at me the morning of coronation.
No, because you're expendable. Like
right. You're expendable.
You die. He'll
right.
marry someone. No,
but I think she's just trying to get him.
Oh yeah.
To admit, like I don't know that she really thinks that. She's just trying to like.
She wants to get to know him. She wants to know him.
She does want to know. She wants to know why he saw a doctor. Is he okay?
Right.
She wants to know, and I think she's also trying to be like, what are you lying to me about? At this point, so he just kind of shrugs that off, that comment about like, her maybe seeing a physician. And she says, well, I am living for the happiness or misery of a great nation, which is what he had said to his mother.
Right.
And,
so did he?
And at that moment, like she's walking out the door and you see it click on his face. He's like, oh, that's what's going on here. That's what she's so upset about. The Dowager Queen is obviously obsessed with getting a royal baby.
It seems to be a thread through this.
We all need a royal baby. Lady Danbury. So the Dowager Queen in part wants a royal baby because, like, goodwill for the people, like trying to like keep the people of England focused on a happy thing, essentially.
Yeah.
And
since they just lost the Americas.
That hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened yet?
That hasn't happened yet. Okay. But like it's possible that like the unrest is happening. Like it's this is like the 60s, 1760s.
Yeah, so they're having to send troops there anyhow. So yeah.
So like, people are not.
When was Boston Tea?
I don't remember.
Keep going.
It had to have been the 70s. They at one point, I forget when this was. I think it's when he's arguing with his mother. He says, because he likes farming, and so he says, I am trying to farm because I think it's important for the people of England to have affordable bread. And that's really legit.
It's happening in France.
Legit. And he's working with a farmer. Like the farmer had been using oxen, and he's like, but this horse will provide like faster work. And so he's trying to like work with the farmers to be more efficient so that they can grow more grain, so they can have cheaper bread. You know, like he really is trying to make England better in a way that he is able to, because he doesn't like crowds. He doesn't like being with people, in part because of the unpredictability of this unknown disease that he has.
Well, and it sounded like, yeah, like he was such a like he was very intelligent, but he did have, yeah, like you said, he had that disease. But from everything, it looks like he was very intelligent.
Yeah. It's, I mean, by all accounts, both in the show and in real life, I think he was quite intelligent. I think he had a difficult time showing that to most people, you know, because of the hindrances that he had based on whatever the disease that he had was. And of course, lack of adequate care for said disease. So they're trying to essentially like create something fun for the British people to focus on. And Lady Danbury says, like, why don't Lord Danbury and I throw the first ball of the season? And the Dowager Queen says no, but Lady Danbury threatens to stop passing along info, which of course the Dowager Queen doesn't of course know that she's not actually passing on any info. She says to Dowager Queen, you wouldn't want to find out later than everyone else that the Queen is with child. She's threatening to withhold that information when the Queen finally gets pregnant.
For her.
I know. Lady Danbury essentially decides that she's hosting this ball. She does not wait for confirmation from the Dowager Queen. She just has the invitations drawn up and sends them out.
Fucking baller. Baller move, dude.
There's a scene that at the time seemed dumb, but later I realized was important. There's a scene in present day when Lady Danbury and Violet Bridgerton are seen in church together. And Violet is there because it was her husband's birthday. And she's sad because her husband is dead.
Right.
And
John, right? Was it John?
Edmund,
that's it. That's right. Yeah.
So they're at it's this interesting dichotomy between the two of them because, of course, Lady Danbury did not have a happy marriage, whereas Violet did.
Definitely did, yeah.
And Lady Danbury says to Violet, you are so fortunate. And Violet's kind of like irritated by that comment because she's like, I'm literally here because my husband is dead. Like, what? Yeah. Why are you saying this to me?
What the ever-loving fuck are you talking about?
So at this point, flashback, Queen Charlotte is meeting for the first time with all of her ladies in waiting, which includes Violet's mother. And of course, Lady Danbury is there, and a young Mozart is playing.
Oh,
yeah. At which point, Charlotte like hears something out the window, and so she gets up and she's looking out the window, and she sees George walking through the gardens shirtless, and it is such a sweet like. I don't even know how to describe it. It's such a funny / sweet moment because Charlotte's face is pressed up against the window. Like you see, they show it from the outside, and like her forehead is like jammed against the window, and then like she's like moving her head to try and see him walk by, and her whole face is fucking hysterical.
That's funny.
Yes. In the meantime, Lady Danbury is talking to the other ladies in waiting, and they're all declining the invitation to the ball because she's black. Yeah. Yep. So then Charlotte confronts George about what he does all day, since he doesn't want to go in public.
He fucks off, yeah.
And he says he farms. Farmer George, I'm a farmer king. And so she visits the gardens. She asks questions, like he's not there, but she asks questions about the gardens. She asks if there are any medicinal herbs in the garden because she saw that doctor and she's still trying to figure out, or she heard about the doctor and she's still trying to figure out what the fuck that doctor is doing. But Brimsley says, no, it's all vegetables. The wives furious about this ball because they don't want to go to Lady Danbury's ball. And they are essentially making their husbands' lives miserable, which is bringing Parliament to a stop, which, by the way, I'm sorry, but like women have more power than they believe. So, dear
Yeah, they
ladies,
do.
like they all say like happy wife, happy life. And I fucking hate that phrase, but they used it in the show. And then they were like, Parliament is literally coming to a screeching halt
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
because
at one
like the
point,
women are pissed off and it's pissing their
well,
husbands off.
that was one of the tactics when they were trying to get like especially the vote there and here too. But it was like, stop fucking your husbands.
Mm-hmm.
They'll turn tail pretty quickly when you stop fucking them.
So that's essentially what's happening here. Um,
Yeah.
and eventually, we'll get a resolve on that. But Lady Danbury tells Queen Charlotte, like, all of our hopes and dreams are resting on your shoulders.
Wow.
And so we need your help, essentially, like with this ball. Brimsley, there's this moment where Brimsley tries to hold Reynolds' hand, but he's still mad at Brimsley, and so he kind of like pulls his hand away, but then he does give in and he holds his hand, and it's really sweet. King George says, I am an exhibit. He says this to Charlotte in one of their conversations. I am an exhibit, not a person. And she says,
It's not wrong.
right. And she says, you are a person to me. You can be a person with me. And I believe this is one of their even days, and they're like talking in bed afterward. I believe that's when this happens. And at this point, they agree that there will be no more even days. We will just have days. So
I like that they did it this way. So it's like, because we all know he's probably fucking, he had mistresses and shit. So, I mean, in real life, probably.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't look into that. It's possible.
But like, I like,
It's also possible that he didn't because of his illness, because he didn't want to
maybe.
let people in and then risk like them shooting off their mouths.
Could be.
But again, I didn't look into it. So at this point we get that's definitely when that happens. Or she says like, we will just have days now. But she says to him, I know that you don't like public engagements, but I need you to do something for me. And so they attend the ball at Lady Danbury's. And he puts word out that the king will be attending so that other people also attend. So a bunch of people show up to Lady Danbury's ball. It's a huge success. George and Charlotte dance to Alicia Keys' If I Ain't Got You instrumental. It's very cute. Which then spurs.
That's one thing I do approve of on this show is I love the instrumentals that are like modern songs. Really get people
I thought you
into
didn't
it.
like that at first, but I think that you've come around to it.
I've come around the corner. At first I didn't like it.
It's cute. I didn't notice it as much in this one, but when I noticed it, it was very cute. So I don't know if they did it as much in this version, but the ones that they use are beautiful.
Well,
I think the Vitamin String Quartet does them. I think. At this point, Bucky,
he's just biting her butt. Like he's just biting her butt. He's part of the Jonathan Bailey Butt Biters Association.
It's our fault. At this point, though, Charlotte and George dance, which spurs Violet's dad to ask Lady Danbury to dance, because when they came in, yeah, it was really cute.
Lord Ledger getting it.
Because when they came in, Lady Ledger was kind of shitty to Lady Danbury.
Of course she was.
And Lord Ledger was like, I like you. I think we should be friends. Like, he's much sweeter than his wife, who's clearly awful. Afterward, the dance is over and Queen Charlotte says, thank you. And George says, you never have to thank me. We are a team, are we not? It's very cute. Flip the page. Okay.
You can continue a story.
Okay, so at this point, some shit goes down. Afterward, of course, Lord Danbury's all fucking keyed up because, like, they had a successful ball, right?
He's going to want it sex, right?
He is fucking Lady Danbury from behind, and has a heart attack and dies.
Yes!
No one's sad. So she's like, my lord, like, because there's like silence and then he falls. She's like, what's happening? So she like crawls to the end of the bed and he's just like laying on his back, like eyes open, like just clearly dead
skis.
as a doornail.
Yeah.
And missing, I guess I didn't notice, but like did he have an erection just like standing up? Because he had like a nightgown on, and I didn't really think to look, but like did he just have like an erection pointing up? Anyway, if you haven't watched it yet, let us know.
I can look it up. Weird thing.
So anyway, Lady Danbury comes out of her bedroom and her lady's maid is there, and she's like, okay, I'll go get your bath ready. I've had water on the fire. I'll go get everything ready. And Lady Danbury goes, no, we don't have to prepare baths as often. And the maid is like, no, but like, it's fine. I can go and I have extra water ready for you. And she's like, no, we don't have to prepare baths as often. And they both like squeal with delight. And then they're like, okay, should I dress you or should we call for help first? And she's like, probably be best if we dress you later. Let's call for help now. It'll look better that way. So Lady Danbury goes,
FYI, there's a thing called a death erection. So a death erection or angel lust, rigor erectus, or terminal erection is a post-mortem erection. But it's like if a man dies in the middle of sexual intercourse, does he maintain his erection? And it says not necessarily, but is possible for men to remain erect after dying while engaged in sexual activity. This is called a death erection, also named angel lust. Wow. And not angel dust, which is something completely different.
That's different podcast.
Yeah, different podcast, different drug.
Yes. So at any rate, they basically fake a crisis after that.
Okay.
Yeah. Present day, Lady Danbury essentially forces Violet to come for tea. She like denies the invitation, says she has things going on. So Lady Danbury picks a different day, and then like Violet tries to like wave off the invitation, like, oh, my carriage is broken. So Lady Danbury sends a carriage for her. She's like, you will be having tea with me. But essentially, the point of this is to explain to Charlotte, or to explain to Violet, why Lady Danbury said you were so fortunate. And she explained like how shitty her husband was, to how he hated orphans, and like he didn't want to help any children out, and like that's why she was at the church that day, to set up a fund for orphans.
Mm-hmm.
And how Edmund lives on through Violet, but everything she does is to erase everything awful about her husband. So that kind of like, Violet is no longer angry after that. Queen Charlotte in present day asks Brimsley why her daughters are not married. Why have my daughters never married? And he says they couldn't leave you here. You are still his queen. They couldn't leave you here because you are here frozen in time.
Huh.
And she gets clearly emotional, and she says, go over there and stop talking. Don't look at me. And then she continues talking about, it's like Christmas time, so she continues talking about how there needs to be more color on the trees. There's too much gold. Put more color on the trees. Episode 4. This is the one that we get kind of from George's standpoint.
Okay.
Sorry. One last thing happens, which sets up episode 4. So at the end of episode 3, Charlotte wakes up at night and hears like scratching and George like mumbling. And she lights a lantern and like follows his voice and finds him like there's some like bare wall in the room, and he is like with charcoal like drawing and making notes and like murmuring to himself about Venus and the Farmer King and like stuff that essentially doesn't make any sense in that moment.
Yeah.
She follows him. He leaves the room and she tries to get his attention. He looks at her briefly, but then turns around and leaves the room. And she follows him. And at one point, a servant like looks at them and she says, the king is working, all is well. Go back to your post. And she just keeps following him. And that servant immediately moves because you assume that he is going to go get Reynolds, because I think all the king's servants know like something's not right with the king.
Yeah.
So she follows him out to the garden where he strips down, takes off his nightgown, like whatever cover thing that they all wear, and then his nightgown.
Yeah.
He's like
Nightshirt.
Yes, he sprints out to the garden. Like at one point I was like,
Okay.
your nightshirt is like riding up, dude. Reynolds tells Brimsley to keep the servants away, like to keep them downstairs, don't let them upstairs. And he starts screaming to Venus, I knew you would come. I knew she would come. And then Charlotte eventually is the one who is able to get, like Reynolds tries to like get something over him. And Charlotte is the one who is able to eventually get something over him. And she says, I am Venus and I'm going inside. So you should come with me because you've been waiting for me. And she gets him inside. Episode 4 begins with Charlotte and Reynolds washing George. He's dirty. I don't know if this is the same night or a different night.
Or another, yeah.
But she says, I found my husband in a hole in the garden. Someone needs to tell me what is going on. And that's this point we get a lot of flashbacks. Everything is from George's point of view. We get this moment where the Dowager Queen calls him out of the fields to say, I have found you a wife. He says her name is Sophia Charlotte. She is on a ship. She's on her way. And then he goes into like an episode and collapses because he says she's on a ship. She'll get lost. She won't be able to follow the moon. She'll get lost.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't make a lot of sense for a reason, right? Like there's
right. Something's
wrong. Enter all the crackpot docs. So he's sitting in a chair.
Great.
And she is telling them, like, someone has got to tell me what is going on. They list a whole bunch of things. This is not the first rodeo. This has been going on for a long time, ever since he was a kid. They bring up inflamed cerebellum, to which then, look this up for me. They are considering trepanation, TREPENATION. They're considering that to treat the inflamed cerebellum.
That is, I look at it, but it's they make a hole in the head and they drain it. They drain blood from it. It's trepanning.
Okay.
It's supposed to be like to release
pressure or something.
Pressure.
Okay.
They still do it.
Yeah, burr holes. Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
Another one says ill humor in the legs. And someone says, we tried that method and the ill humor just went to his stomach. And then another one is like, diet is key. And he's sitting in this chair and he looks so scared and sad. Like it's just truly, imagine being like the leader of a nation and not even knowing who you are at times.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just so sad.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. So new crackpot doc stands up. And he's like, I believe this is nervous issues. It's like a nervous issue, not a physical issue. And this is when the discussion comes up, like we cannot have him declared insane because he will lose the crown. He says it's disorganization of the nerves. This is Dr. John Monroe from Bethlehem Hospital. And someone says, that's Bedlam. That's the madhouse.
Right.
He wants to talk to George. So he holds his head in his hand and he says, you command an entire kingdom. You can command yourself too. And it does kind of snap him out of it. They ask him, are you fit to marry? Because mind you, this is before the wedding that this has happened. And he nods. He says, I am fit to marry. So now we're
Yeah, he's got to
back.
get her pregnant. I mean, if he's declared, I would assume if he's declared not sane, well, he's got brothers, right? So is he
I
the eldest?
don't know about that because there's no mention of like so and so. You'll have to look up if George III had any siblings. I'm not sure if he did. I had the
Um,
family tree up. Let me look. I may have
let's
closed it.
see. Yeah, there's Prince Frederick, Prince
Hmm.
Henry.
I don't.
I
Maybe
mean,
they
because
didn't
what would
bring
have
them
happened? It would have gone to
right.
one of the
It
yeah.
would have gone to one of the other ones. Why they did not bring that up, I don't know. Maybe it was like a time issue. No idea. Um.
And
Regardless,
maybe the other two were like maybe the other ones were sleazy. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe his mom was just like, no, this is the king. Like this is who it's going to be. We have to keep going through this line. I have no idea.
Right.
Um. So now we're back to the day of the wedding. They don't show everything all the way through. They show like snippets of it, but essentially we're seeing the wedding, but through his eyes.
Right.
Um. For example, we see Brimley run into the room. He is in this room, which we did not really see the first time.
Hmm.
But we see him sitting at a table and his hands are starting to shake. He's starting to experience some symptoms of this, like whatever he has. So he gets up. He needs some air. He's probably honestly going to run away. But he runs into that doctor. The doctor holds his head and then literally slaps him in the face. And
Whoa.
all of like the footmen around him like immediately draw like
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Because he
George,
physically assaulted the yeah
yes, and George is
the
like, no,
Yeah.
everything's fine. He's fine. And George, for what it's worth, snaps out of it, and he's like, I'm just gonna go for a walk. Goes for a walk in the garden, which is where he finds Charlotte trying to climb over the wall. And that's the end of the scene. Like, so we get introduced to like
Hmm.
where he is, but not every detail like we've already had, because that would be repetitive. Um, we get a scene with him and Reynolds at that point. And this is why I was saying, like, I don't think that we're seeing signs of his illness right now. Um,
Hmm.
we get scenes of like him taking her to Buckingham House, and after he leaves and goes back to Kew to the observatory, he's talking to Reynolds, and Reynolds says to him, "Is she not attractive to you? Like, what is it that you don't like about her?" And he says, "No, Queen Charlotte is beautiful. Like, I didn't realize that a woman could be that beautiful. And she is clever, and she makes me look like a troll, like the troll that I am." Um, because she makes his quote, this is his word. I'm not saying it's his word, not mine. She makes his quote deformity more pronounced. Um, and he wants her to be safe from him. So I think this is a conscious decision on his part to stay away from her for what he truly thinks is the greater good of the country, for her, for him. I think for all around. I think he thinks
Hmm.
he's doing the right thing. Um, we do cut back to Charlotte, like, for context sometimes, to figure out like timeline. Where are we? Um, at this point, George asks the doctor, um, are there more like experimental treatments that you can do? Because I'm sure you're being safe, because I am a royal. I am the head of the Church of England. I am the King of England. I'm sure you're playing everything safe. What are the experimental treatments to try and make me better? Because I'm willing to try
Hmm.
them. Because he wants to be better for her.
Mm.
Um, so he's like, yeah, okay, we could do this. And then it gets really sad for a while. Um, he tells George that he has never had to be obedient. He forces him out of bed in the morning and has his like helpers drag him places. He gives him ice baths. Like, he essentially tortures him in an ice bath many times. Like at Guantanamo, like, this would have been declared a war crime. Like, this, it's not okay. He makes him eat absolute crap food that, like, later Reynolds says to him, like, we wouldn't feed this to servants, and you're eating it. It looks like unflavored oatmeal. Like, that's what it looks like. It's not the same food we're seeing Charlotte eating interspersed with these scenes. He tells him that he needs to learn how to submit. Submission is the cure. So it's, like, creepy in many ways, and, like, in other ways I'm like, is this sexual for you, Doc? Like, are you gonna get off by, like, torturing the king? They strap him to a chair. They put a leather bite in his mouth. There are animals all around him, like in cages, and they're all whimpering and scared. We don't see any animals harmed, but we can assume that all of these animals have been harmed.
Yes,
but we do not see it happen, just for the record. And I think you'll like where this is going after the horrible things, by the way. One of the he says, in here, you are not the king. You are just another animal in a cage, and just like an animal, I will break you. They basically torture him.
I'm really looking if this guy was real or not.
Look him up. John, what did I say?
Monroe.
There's no E on the end. It's just Morno,
right.
I think. If he was real and if any of this is accurate, I hope he died horribly.
Of course. Why was he Scottish? What the fuck?
An asshole. So during the whole thing, when like Augusta was like, how are you going to treat him? How are you going to fix this? I don't want to hear about the shit that you've been doing. Leeches have not worked. Bloodletting has not worked. Nothing's working. What else are you going to try?
Right.
Of course, they have leeches attached to his body. When they said they wouldn't. Right, but they said they wouldn't. At this point, like, he's going through all of this. He agrees to do it like every day, essentially. He and Reynolds are talking, and he says that he would like to be near her, but he does not want to. He doesn't feel like he can trust himself to be with her. So he essentially goes to Buckingham House and like spies on her, and like will sit by a window and watch her outside play chess by herself. Like, she is literally playing herself in chess.
It is heartbreaking.
I know, it is so fucking sad. He wants to be near her. So then Reynolds says, like, hey, how about a gesture? So like at this point we know that he and Brimsley have spoken. And George says, hey, do you know when the doctor will be around? And so he goes with Reynolds into the torture room, essentially, and takes out the Pomeranian. And that's what he sends to Charlotte. And he says to Reynolds,
they were torturing that little fucking dog.
Which kind of explains why the Pomeranian was sitting in a basket whining. Because it was probably scared as fuck.
Yeah, I'm scared as fuck for it.
There's one moment where she's laying in bed and the Pomeranian's in a basket on the floor, and she picks up the basket and puts it on the bed so that he's like closer to her. He says, when he takes the dog out of the cage, he says, from my cage to hers. Yeah. And for whatever reason, this fucking dickhead doctor is like shaving George. Like, he's the person shaving his face in the morning, and it's very creepy. It gives me Sweeney Todd vibes, like very creepy. And it's very clear that was intentional on their part. Like, they did this on purpose, like to create tension and like, yeah.
And you have a knife to
the king's throat,
king's neck. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So of course, like, the dog is gone now, and he is shaving the king and asking about like, do you trust your staff? One of my dogs is missing. And at that point, actually, George stops him from shaving and takes the razor blade, finishes it himself, and I forgot, I didn't write down what he said, but he gave like a decent monologue there to the doctor. He's clearly intelligent and well spoken. It's just that something is going on.
FYI, I looked it up. I don't think he doesn't. It does not say he had any illegitimate children. So.
Oh well, that's good.
Yeah. So it means, and from what there's one article here said something like along the lines of it seemed to be a very close and loving relationship. So.
Aww, I hope
yeah.
so.
Anyhow.
So then after that, George chooses farming over treatment. There's like he's supposed to go in for treatment with the doctor, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna go farm instead. And then when he is teaching this farmer how to use the horse with a plow attached to it, he says something, I think, about being hungry or something, and the farmer is like, I'm not sure that anything we can find for you will be up to your standards, but I'm sure I could find you some bread or, you know, maybe some stew. And he says, you know what, I think I'm gonna go have dinner with my wife. And he leaves, and this is when he goes to join her for a meal, and she gets super pissed off. While he's waiting for her, his hand, the first sign that you typically see is that his hand starts to shake. And so he's starting to kind of go down into a spiral waiting for her. And Reynolds comes up behind him and puts his hand on his shoulder. And he starts to calm down. And he's able to like chill out. But I don't know what I wrote next, but it looks like I wrote he's so nervous about this blade. And I have no idea what we're talking about here.
It's like my notes.
I know.
For E3. I know what the fuck I wrote here. Vision Quest. I have no idea.
I have no idea what's going on. So at any rate, he has a great night with Charlotte. Obviously that's the night that they end up wait, no, that's already happened.
Yeah, he did.
Wait, yeah, that is the night that they ended up consummating their marriage.
Yeah, they did.
And he tells the doctor, he essentially dismisses the doctor because now he's moving into Buckingham House. He says, Queen Charlotte has helped me more than you ever have. After he moves into Buckingham House, there is a scene where he finds the doctor in like the Buckingham House kitchens. And he says, what are you doing here? I dismissed you. And he said, oh, well, I saw the Queen and I'm making something for her. And she wasn't sure, but I'm sure she is with child. And that's what sets him off. That's what makes him start scribbling on the wall and running out to the garden and screaming about Venus. I wrote, fuck that doctor. Charlotte at this point, after this happens, storms. Like I think they finish cleaning him up. And then the next morning, he wakes up alone in bed and hears a carriage outside and realizes that Charlotte is leaving. And so he has Reynolds ready his carriage so that he can go follow Charlotte. Because I think he's scared that she's going to leave him. And so he follows her to wherever the fuck the Dowager Queen is. And she storms into the Dowager Queen's tea, interrupts it, shoos everyone out, and starts asking her questions. And says, I would like to know why, as soon as my husband moved into Buckingham House, why the knives were suddenly dulled. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to cut English muffin with a dull knife? And that reminded me that, like, in previous scenes, you would see, like, her forcibly cutting things. And I thought it was just her being irritated or, like, frustrated. And she was taking it out on the food or whatever. The knives were dulled because he was moving into Buckingham House. All of a sudden, she says, the windows are sealed shut. And there are locks everywhere. And none of that was there before, just because he was moving in. What have you not told me about him? You lied to me. And she says, the Dowager Queen says, you would do anything to help your son when you have watched your son cracking over his entire life. You would do anything to stop that cracking. I believe she says, if you ever give me an heir, you will understand why I have done the things that I have done. George overhears this conversation.
Oh.
And goes back to the crazy doctor and asks to resume treatment.
Oh, no.
It's fucking terrible. It's so fucking awful and sad. And so just like these two conversations that have happened that neither were supposed to overhear. And in many ways, like miscommunication trope. Like if you would ask, you could have maybe solved or like stopped some of these problems.
Right.
Episode 5.
Here's the third act breakup. Got it.
Yeah, so we're in episode 5. There are only 6 episodes, okay? Present day. Everyone's at the opera. I was wondering what opera they were seeing, because also in that speech from Charlotte to Augusta, she says all Shakespeare is still in the library except King Lear, the Mad King. You have removed the Mad King.
Oh, okay, that's a little far. I mean,
so then they're in an opera, and I'm like, are they seeing like an operatic version of King Lear? Like, I just wondered, but I don't know. Probably not. So anyway, they're at the opera in present day.
Was there one made?
I don't know. But I wondered,
I'll look it up
because I was watching these back to back. I was like, I wonder, would they just brought up King Lear, you know? And Charlotte
Yep, there's a Verdi. No, Ryman. There's a Lear opera, but I think this is a new one. This is a new 1978.
Okay, no.
So
I don't know, but it's this beautiful Black woman giving this amazing aria. She sounds fucking fabulous. And Charlotte is up in her box, like with tears in her eyes. And across the way, Danbury and Violet are watching the opera. And Violet asks Lady Danbury if she thinks that the queen ever gets lonely, which she probably does, right? Like, but basically she was asking, like, do you think the queen is like, has a dude on the side, or like ever masturbates, basically. Like, that's what she's essentially saying. It's fucking funny. And Lady Danbury is like, are you really asking about the queens? Like,
are you fucking kidding me? Yeah.
And the thing is, Lady Danbury is not at all like, she's not offended, and she's not like trying to defend the queen's honor. She's just like, Violet Bridgerton. She thinks it's funny.
You think she rubs one out? You think so?
You think so?
Like,
you think that? I mean,
yeah.
Never know. Because we definitely get a scene in this episode where Violet is laying in bed, and she considers like her hand is starting to travel, but she doesn't. I was like, are we going to get like a 40+ woman masturbation scene in Bridgerton? I was like, what's happening? We didn't, though.
Oh, because this is in the present.
Yes,
God,
present
I was
day.
like, hold on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, also still present day. Queen Charlotte wakes up in the middle of the night, rings for Brimsley, and he says, he comes in, and she says, is he dead? And he said, I haven't heard anything, so I would imagine that the king is fine, that the king is well. And she says, can you please just find out for me? I just want to double check. And Brimsley's like, of course I will. Nothing goes beyond that, so we have to assume that the king is fine. Because, by the way, we've not seen the king yet.
Right. Which I looked to see, because I know the actor from the OG show, and I didn't see him listed.
He does show up in the next episode, but it might be someone different. I don't know. I didn't look at who.
This is Gardens in Bloom, correct? So,
yes.
Okay.
So back in the past, George is screaming because he's being tortured.
This is great.
Reynolds this is probably the hardest episode to watch, to be honest. This was really fucking hard. Reynolds is outside the door and is clearly contemplating opening the door to see if he can stop it. Like, he kind of reaches for the doorknob at one point and then stops. Again, Lord Danbury, dead.
Oh, same guy. Sorry. Same guy.
Same guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
Lord Danbury, dead. So they're having his funeral. She tells her lady's maid she was promised to Lord Danbury at 3 years old. So she was groomed from age 3 until however old she is now to believe like gold was his favorite color. And so therefore I was told that gold was my favorite color. I was told like he likes whatever kind of music. So therefore I had to like whatever kind of music and books, like same thing for everything. Right. She says, I am brand new and I don't even know how to breathe air that he does not exhale.
Yeah.
I know, like, I mean, so much 20 plus years of her life probably have been devoted to him. And now she's still young. She's still probably in her mid 20s and has a life she could live beyond this.
Yeah.
And
she could get married again.
She could do anything she fucking wants to, theoretically, you know?
Yeah. I mean, this is the time you're gonna get some, lovers and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was not it was like totally justified. Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, you're already like you were married. You know, whatever.
You did your duty, man.
Sure did. At this point, you kind of get like a hint that Charlotte might know she's pregnant because there's one scene prior to her going to bed with George where she touches her lower stomach, and you kind of wonder. But nothing then has come of it until like that crackpot doctor is like, oh, well, the queen asked me, blah, 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 because I know that she's with child. And so then like, you're like, yeah, but is he lying? Like, you just don't know.
Right. Right. And what is he lacing this with? Who knows?
Right. And that's, I think, really what sets him just like, he's just like, holy shit. Like, this doctor has been talking to my wife. And anyway, so we know now that Charlotte is pregnant and she's quite far along. The Dowager Queen has literally rolled up with a doctor to confirm this pregnancy. And then like Charlotte is just forced to lay there and like undergo this gross doctor sitting between her legs. She writes a letter to King George afterward. Oh, by the way, the Dowager Queen is like, I will be with you until this baby is born. I'm
great.
moving into Buckingham House.
Oh, wonderful. I'm sure she was excited about that.
So thrilled. At this point, she writes a letter to King George. Brimsley is angry with Reynolds. He tells Reynolds to he gives this letter to Reynolds to deliver to George. George he like knocks on the door to the torture chamber essentially.
Jesus.
One of the like assistants opens it, like not enough to really see anything in the room. And he says George is not taking visitors or whatever. And he says, I am the king's man. I will see him whenever I want to see him.
Right.
So they put George in the crack of the door that they open. They shut in his face and then like open it again and George is right there. They only open it enough to show George. He does not have a shirt on. He has pants on. He is clearly not well. He says, you have a letter. And they try to like read it or something, or like they're like, you read it to him or whatever. I don't know. Like, but he says like, I cannot open royal mail. It is for George. It is not for anyone else. And the crackpot doctor is like, no, he's not ready. He can't have any letters. And George says, put it with the others. So while you might think that this is the first letter that the queen has written him, it is not. So Reynolds goes and puts it in the observatory with a stack of other letters that have the same handwriting. They're all from Charlotte. Yeah.
Luna, go upstairs. Go.
I also wrote the shit doctor won't let him leave, which I assume I'm talking about George at that point. At this point, because Lord Danbury is dead, the mourning period I think is coming to an end or something. Maybe she's still in mourning. I don't fucking remember. I
think it's a year at least. I think
they expedite it for this. I don't think that like official mourning might be like a week or two.
It is official, and then they have to wear black for so long, and they're not supposed to get married or
right.
And it goes social stuff, right. And yeah.
But this is the great experiment, and no one knows what's happening. So a bunch of people, all like Black people with titles, roll up to Lady Danbury's house and is like, what happens now with your line
Right.
of succession? Does your son take the title or not? And she's like, honestly, I have no idea. I didn't think about it. I haven't thought about it yet. And so
Right.
they're clearly all concerned about this because they're like, what happened? Like, this is the first time this has happened. And we need to know that our lines of
Right.
succession will follow their side. Does this apply to
Right.
our side as well? They also use something here that is a term they used in Scandal, another Shonda Rhimes show. They say rare air. This is rare air. You have breathed rare air.
Hmm.
So again, the Dowager Queen is staying with Queen Charlotte. They're having a royal wedding portrait painted.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the king is not sitting for his portrait, but the queen is. And she is miserable. Fucking miserable.
Oh, I'm sure. Hasn't seen her husband, and who the fuck knows?
Uh-huh.
He's not responding to her letters. She's
Yep.
pregnant, and he doesn't. I would assume she probably feels like he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, she also feels lied to. She's like, no one told me, and he wasn't allowed to tell me what was going on,
Right.
and now I am stuck here, carrying the
Right.
future King of England. So they're painting this portrait. She wants to get up. She's like, you have to almost be done. And he turns the portrait around. He's like, I'm not even half done because the king is not here. And she makes a comment about like the colors or something like that, about how he's done a good job. And the Dowager Queen says, make the queen's skin lighter.
Oh God. Okay.
The king wants her to glow. Now, like the Dowager Queen is just using all these, like the king wants, and it's not what the king wants. The king has said none of these things,
No.
but the Dowager Queen is saying them on behalf of the quote king. So he
And
tells her to.
does Charlotte believe?
No, I
Does Charlotte
don't
believe
think
this?
that. I don't think that.
Okay. Okay.
Because she doesn't even call the Dowager Queen any titles or any names. She calls her or she. Where is she?
Oh wow. She doesn't even say Augustus. She just says her
Or she. Whenever she asks Brimsley, she says, where is she?
Kind of love that.
Oh yeah, for real. And he always knows. I mean, he's like, she is out doing whatever, or she is at tea with so and so. Queen Charlotte continues to write letters. However, one of them, Brimsley opens and reseals and finds out that she is actually writing to her brother to ask him to come home and get her, and take her home. He sees Reynolds and says, he's like, I could forget to post this. But Reynolds says, nothing is to be done. Post the letter. Because he knows that George won't do anything. Because George thinks that he has to get better before he can see the queen.
This is depressing as fuck, man.
I know, dude. So Lady Danbury needs some air. She's in her own unique way of mourning. While she did not like or love her husband, she is now in the space where, like, what do I do with the rest of my life? And I don't even know who I am. And I need some fresh air. I have to get out of this house. So she goes out walking, and wanders onto the Ledger estate, Violet's dad.
Yay.
Because they like butt up against each other. Like their estates have a shared property line. And he suggests that they go for a ramble together. And she's like, what is a ramble? And she says, I'm taking a walk. And he's like, oh, I like to call them rambles because they make me sound less crazy if I call it a ramble, as opposed to just like taking a walk by myself through all of the fields, you know? So they walk together. And that happened. Like they go through multiple walks together. Same time, like they always meet at like this little shack that is on like the border of their property lines. Present day, Princess Victoria and Princess Adelaide come to meet Edward and William. Charlotte is forcing marriages on them. She says, you guys, the two of you, getting married to these two ladies. It's happening next week.
Done.
Done.
Yep.
This is happening. Violet and Lady Danbury, present day again, mind you, they go to an art exhibit, and it is full of nude paintings. And Violet is hot and bothered. Violet is fanning herself. And this is where we get, she says Anthony is on his honeymoon. And this is when we get the name of the episode where she says, my garden is in bloom. Violet's horny, you guys. Violet is horny. She says to Lady Danbury, I almost asked a footman to lie on top of me yesterday. Lady Danbury goes, Violet, Bridgerton. And then Violet gets horribly embarrassed and runs away. It's so goddamn funny. And then we're back in flashbacks for just a second where Lady Danbury and Lord Ledger are walking together. Throw ourselves right back into present day. The William and Edward go to Queen Charlotte and say, due to the Royal Marriages Act, which is a real thing, you cannot tell us who to marry because you cannot approve marriages. Only the king can do that. Or in this case, the Prince Regent, because the king is incapacitated. So he says, George IV, has to approve of our marriages. You can't make us do this. And Charlotte is like, you're right. I overstepped. And then she looks very calmly. She's like embroidering something. She looks very calmly at Georgie and she says, now, Georgie, be a good boy and approve your brother's marriages. And he goes, I approve. The boys are so pissed off.
How old is Georgie at this point?
They're all, I mean, my God, they've got to be like, they're all adults. Every single child is an adult.
Oh, okay.
So they're they all have to be in their 20s and above at this point.
Okay.
Okay, so her brother arrives, flashback. Her brother arrives, and she says, I want to go home. And he, of course, says, you're emotional. And she threatens to behead him.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But he says, like, I can't take you home. You are literally carrying the next heir to the English throne.
Right.
And more so, something that he did not tell her was that he negotiated an alliance between their two countries. Like, it's the political nature of the marriage that he negotiated for her. And he's like, I can't. Right. I would basically be starting a war if I took you home. A war that our country would not win.
It's called treason, it's
literally called treason. I cannot take you. Lady Danbury is again trying to figure out what to do, and so she's meeting Ledger at this house again for like that little shack or whatever to go for a walk, and the two of them almost kiss. I'm gonna leave you with that for now.
Okay. I mean, she's single. He's got a cunt of a wife. I mean, not gonna hate it.
Stay tuned. So, she's again in trying to figure out what she is going to do, Lady Danbury. She is told to seek the kindness of a male relative or remarry. Those are her options. Her husband has spent more money than she realized, and she could very well lose the house that she lives in and her title. She could be completely penniless. So the solicitor is literally like, remarry or depend on the generosity of a male relative.
Cool.
Yeah. She gets real pissed and starts like kicking the bed that her husband's bed basically, and like ripping the linens off of the bed and stuff like that, and like composes herself because
can you hear this ruckus that's happening behind me?
Not really. Every once in a while.
I'm gonna hope the microphone doesn't pick it up because it is like they're both being dickheads tonight. Anyhow,
they're fine, don't worry about it. Okay, so the Dowager Queen is talking to Charlotte, and
so she doesn't make a decision in that moment.
She does not make a decision in that moment.
Okay.
She doesn't make a
Got it.
decision until the end of the next episode, basically.
Okay.
The Dowager Queen says, "You've done your duty. You conceived an heir. As for my son, you don't even have to see him again if you don't want. At least not until we need another heir. Because you need an heir and a spare."
Yep. Heir and a spare.
Yep. Which is so nice. There is a beautiful moment where, like, after this conversation, Queen Charlotte is walking away and is walking down the hall, and she starts to get really teary and starts to cry, and she stops walking. Of course, Brimsley 5 paces behind her at all times. And there's this really sweet moment. The relationship between Charlotte and Brimsley is consistently highlighted because the two of them, more than anyone else in their lives, the two of them are partners and friends to some extent. I mean, as much as a friend as the two people in their positions can be. They are
to your indentured servant.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
right.
They are closer than probably than they are to anyone else in their lives. So he's 5 paces behind her. She stops and she has tears in her eyes. Like a couple tears have broken free and are down her face. And you see his hand twitch a little bit and it comes up, and very similarly, like mirrored to the way that Reynolds did with George. But of course, he's still 5 paces behind her, and he just kind of brings his hand up, and it's like he's going to touch her shoulder. And it's like she's kind of fortified by that. And she like takes a couple deep breaths and wipes that tear away and keeps on going. And he follows 5 paces behind her. It's a very sweet moment. Reynolds, in the meantime, tries his damnedest to stop the torture from happening to George, because it's like other servants hear it. And other servants say, like, it was 3 hours yesterday, like, so they know something's going on. He gets in the room and they literally, the lackeys literally pick him up and throw him out the door, and he like hits the wall. Yeah, they're fucking terrible. Back to present day, Lady Danbury asks Violet to meet her at the exhibit again. And applauds Violet for telling her some of her story, because so much of women's stories are overshadowed by men's stories and not told ever in the first place. Like, we are not even the lead of the narrative when in our own marriage. You are in the background. You are not allowed by society standard to be in the forefront. So I applaud you for telling me some of your story, and I thank you for doing that. It's very kind. Back to flashbacks. Charlotte's fucking miserable. Lady Danbury is making sure that her kids are going to be taken care of. At this point, that is Danbury's sole focus, is what will happen for my children. I don't want them to lose their wealth within a generation. She takes her oldest son, his name is Dominic, and I think he's 4. She dresses him up and she takes him to meet the Dowager Queen. At this point, the Dowager Queen is refusing to say whether or not the line of succession will follow. What she says is the king is the only person who can make that decision.
Cool.
So she brings her son to meet the Dowager Queen, I think in order to like humanize him a little bit, with her.
To put a face to the name. Like, you're going to tell this little boy who's adorable, like, no.
And she introduces him as Lord Danbury. And Lord Bute, that fucker, stops the Dowager Queen from addressing him as Lord Danbury, because the succession has not been decided yet. So when they're leaving, he says,
Lord Bute.
I know. I don't know. I just hate
Richard
him.
Cunningham.
Well, I hate him.
He looks like
smarmy.
A douchebag. Yeah.
So they're leaving, and Dominic says to Lady Danbury, "Did I do my duty, Mom? Did I do a good job?" Essentially.
Side note: almost all the actors from this show are in Star Wars Rogue One, so it's really funny. He was in Star Wars Rogue One. Yeah. Anyhow.
Weird. So
it's very weird.
He says, "Did I do my job, Mom? Did I do a good job?" And she stops and kneels down in front of him and reminds him of his familial line, because she says, in this country, you are Lord Dan, I forget his name, Herman, whatever the fuck his name was. You are Lord Danbury's son. But on my side, you are from warriors. She is from like a royal family in Sierra Leone. And so,
Oh wow.
and so she says, like, you are from warriors in your mother's home country. And always remember that on your father's side, you are a lord, and on your mother's side, you are a warrior.
Well, it's really interesting. So, Lady Danbury's grandson is, I believe, yes, I believe, is Hyacinth book.
Oh,
I believe. Let me look. Um, hold on. Give me.
I could see that, because in the flashbacks, Violet isn't even out in society yet, and Lady Danbury has a 4-year-old son. So, like, she has 4 kids. They're all like 4 and under.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if can somebody just give me the fucking okay. Bridgerton books.
I forget. I don't remember what Hyacinth's book is called.
I believe it's in his kiss. Possibly is hers. Yes, Gareth, blah, blah, blah. Gareth, Lady Danbury's grandson. And Hyacinth. Yep.
Okay.
They like there's something with his father in that book, if I remember correctly, because they do a whole bunch of like sleuthing together in that one.
Oh.
Because his father marries an Italian woman. Like his father ends up not being, but I don't know if that is like if that's this
If
same
it's
person
Dominic or if it's somebody else.
Right.
Because you only see the kids like a couple times.
But
I mean, a nanny is caring for them. You know, like, it's weird that he was brought out with his mother for an outing.
Yeah, like so the summary of that book is Gareth St. Clair receives an old family diary found among his late brother's belongings, but it's written in Italian. Gareth's grandmother, Lady Danbury, reintroduces him to Hyacinth Bridgerton, who can translate. Together they discover past secrets and the key to their future. There's a lot of sneaking into places and sleuthing, because Hyacinth ends up being more along the lines, like more like closer in character to Eloise. So
that's fun.
Anyhow, sorry.
So in the meantime, Lady Danbury, during their discussions, her discussions with Lord Ledger, she mentions that like her birthday is next week. And she's not even looking forward to it because, like, why?
Right.
So there was this thing at the beginning, or a thing when Violet and Lady Danbury saw each other at the church on the day that Violet was sad about Edmund because it was his birthday. She tells Lady Danbury about how her father used to make them all birthday hats, or used to make her birthday hats every year. And how she still has them all, and how she made birthday hats for her own kids. And yeah, and it's a sweet moment, but like also at the time I was kind of like, whatever. Well, that comes back.
It's gonna come back. Yeah,
That comes back.
It's gonna come back
because Lord Ledger is making Lady Danbury a birthday hat for her birthday.
And he's still married, right?
Still married.
Okay.
So so he's making this birthday hat. Lady Danbury, in the meantime, ends up seeing Queen Charlotte. And this is the first time she's seen her since Lord Danbury died. Lady Danbury has not mentioned any of the things with the line of succession to Charlotte because she does not want to burden Charlotte. She knows that something is going on with the king, and she knows that Charlotte is pregnant. And so she does not want to stress her out or do anything that would add to Charlotte's burden.
Yeah, what's going on with her? Yeah.
Exactly. At this point, we get a much kinder version of Sorrow's prayers from young Queen Charlotte to Lady Danbury.
Yeah.
She goes, she says something like, "Oh, that's right. I haven't seen you since Lord Danbury's passing. Sorrow's prayers." Um, however, at this point, maybe actually, I'm sorry, it's Charlotte actually goes to Lady Danbury's house, kind of like unannounced. And this is the first time that she has seen Lady Danbury since Lord Danbury passed. And Charlotte is literally like, I cannot go home. And I cannot go back to Germany. So can I please stay with you?
That's a thing. That's a big thing.
It's a very big thing. And she says to Lady Danbury, "You are my only friend." And Lady Danbury says to her, kind of like, I'm not your friend. I would like to be your friend. I've been your lady in waiting, but I would like to be your friend. So how about we start over? And so they kind of like form a new friendship out of this. Like she sees that Charlotte is not happy, just so depressed, and pregnant, which of course is going to like make it worse. And she feels very stuck. And,
Right. Your hormones already.
right.
Yeah.
Back to present day. People be getting married. And William and Edward, as I said, are getting married. William is scared. He goes up to Charlotte and he says that he's scared. And she's like, "Why?" And he said, "I'm scared that I won't be able to love her." Because she says, like, you need to get married because it's your duty. And hopefully you can love her. And she says something that's quite beautiful. She says, "Love is determination. Love is a choice one makes. You take someone in marriage and you choose to love them." Now, that is obviously not always the case, and that's fine. No. But I also think that as a person who has been with my husband for, I don't know, we're going on 14 years now. Like, my God. Okay. Do
you have a moment there? You're like, holy shit.
But like after you have been with someone for many years ongoing, it is a choice that you wake up and you choose that person every day. You choose that it doesn't always work out, and that's fine. And I am the first person to say that not every relationship works out. Not every marriage works out. But if you still respect that person, you still care for that person, and you wake up every day and choose that person, you have a fighting chance. And if you don't, then you don't.
Yeah.
But she's basically trying to say, you will love them if you choose to. Yeah. It's a beautiful humanizing moment for Charlotte, because we don't have many of them. But as the season progresses and as we learn more about young Charlotte, we see more cracks in present day Charlotte, and we see some of young Charlotte shine through. And it's very sweet, and I think kind of necessary. Going back to flashbacks, Queen Charlotte's real pissed at her brother and says, "You sold me." She's just so irritated.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what she said. "You sold me."
Yes. And she is leaving to go to Q. She said that she's coming back. He had gone to Lady Danbury's to get her, and brought her back to Buckingham House. And as she's walking in the house, she stops, and he's like, "What is going on?" She turns around. She says, "You sold me off to be the Queen of England. I am off to be the Queen of England." And she gets back in her carriage and she rolls off to Q. In the meantime, Lord Ledger rolls up to Lady Danbury's house to give her the birthday hat.
I'm going to guess he's going to give her more than the birthday hat.
He certainly did. There is a moment though for Lady Danbury when like she's in this bed staring at the ceiling again. She's clearly having a better time, but like she's staring at the ceiling, and you get this moment where she's just like, I don't want to be staring at the ceiling. And so she like pushes him and like gets on top. And I mean, but again, like she's covered, like she has like a thing on. He's naked though.
Okay, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Not complaining.
So, you know, Lady Danbury has now realized she has a garden because she has never ever enjoyed sex.
Yes, I like it.
And that's it. Like, they talk about that. Like Lady Danbury realizes that she has a garden. And that's the discussion that I think when she meets with Violet at the exhibit for the second time, she says, I did not realize I had a garden until after my husband died, and I entertained it. I flourished that garden after my husband died.
Do they so just because I mean I would assume they don't fulfill the act because like not fulfill it, but he doesn't come in her because he would be, I mean I would have assumed they'd be afraid that she get pregnant.
There was this moment, did I write it down? I don't know if I did. I don't think I wrote it down, but he he is talking to her. Oh, maybe we haven't even technically gotten there yet. But he does say, she says something like, you cannot come inside. And he says, I will not come inside. So I'm guessing that he did not come inside. Anyway, present day, Lady Danbury is looking for something in her suitcases and whatnot. She's looking for the birthday hat, and she does find it that he made for her. But we flash back to the Queen rolling up to Kew in search of King George. That fucking terrible doctor tries to stop her, and she was like, fuck that, and like walks right by, storms into the room where they are literally burning him with hot pokers. Hot poker.
What was the point of that?
I don't know. Hot poker in the fire. You see them like bring it out and put it on his leg, like on his fucking leg. For like what reason?
The humors that are in his legs.
So she talks to George, and he is not well. Clearly,
no, I'm sure not.
He's literally being tortured. He's not okay. She goes up to him and holds his face and talks to him and is like, remember me? I'm Charlotte. I'm Charlotte. You're just George. You are Farmer George. I need to talk to George. I need George to come back. And she takes his hand and puts it on her belly. And he kind of like goes still. And she's like, do you feel that kicking? That's the future king. And she's able to like pull him back. And she goes back outside to get Brimsley and immediately dismisses the doctor and says, you're lucky I am not doing worse than just dismissing you. Get the fuck out. And tells Brimsley, we are moving to Kew. And that's how we get to the final episode.
Okay.
She's living at Kew with George, obviously. The Dowager Queen is real pissed that this doctor has been dismissed. And the Dowager Queen expresses a concern that Charlotte is actually trying to rule over George. Which...
somebody's got to rule.
Somebody's got
to do something.
I mean, I remember you and I saying in the first season, who is actually running the country? Like, where is the king? Before we knew what was going on. Like, it was kind of clear that like the Queen was extremely involved in day-to-day operations.
Right. Because at this point, I mean, they have a prime minister, but I mean, like most of it, up until like, I mean, still now, I mean, like if you watched most of The Crown or you know anything like, but even World War II, I mean, Churchill was constantly in Congress with Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, and so, for all we know, they might still do that. Like the prime minister had a standing meeting. Churchill had with the Queen. At the time, for a long time, they probably still do, had a standing meeting with the prime minister and the monarch.
Yeah. I mean, not probably as much anymore because it's kind of like...
maybe not.
Parliament.
Right.
Yeah, because Parliament is more, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not, but it's a thing. Like they're in... consistent communication.
Yeah, they're in concordance with each
Right.
other. Yeah.
So present day, Violet and Lady Danbury are going for a walk, and Violet finds the birthday hat at Lady Danbury's house. Again, present day, Queen Charlotte is sitting for a royal portrait with all of the children. The king is obviously not there. Flashbacks. George tries to tell her to leave, and she obviously won't. She's like, no, absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here with you. She says that she loves him and she will leave him alone. But first, he has to tell her that he does not love her. She says, I will go back to Buckingham House. I will raise this baby on my own. And I will leave you alone if you want. But first, you have to tell me that you do not love me.
Do you think that's earned, though? It feels like most of the series has been them two separate. Like, not even. I mean, are there enough scenes together to
Yes.
to reliably say, like,
yes? When they are together, they're so sweet together. They're so sweet,
okay,
and it's so clear that the two of them really do care about each other.
okay,
Again, just like the force of these annoying overheard conversations drawing them apart. I do think watching the series, it's clear that they both still care about each other very much.
got it. Okay.
He says that she should not wish for life with a madman. They argue. She just keeps stopping him and saying, "Do you love me?" And he says, I highly recommend you look this scene up. It's probably on things. It's definitely
I'm gonna end up watching. FYI, spoiler alert, I'm gonna watch this.
I
so
recommend
it's
it.
fine.
Episode 5 is really fucking hard, but like episode 6 is worth the payoff. He says heaven and the heavens and earth collide and get confused in my mind. Like I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. You don't want this. And she says, I will stand with you between the heavens and the earth. I will tell you where you are. Do you love me? And he screams, I love you. And he says, from the moment I saw you trying to climb over that wall, I love you. I can't breathe when you are not near. I love you. It's so fucking sweet and just beautiful with like the two of them trying to like figure out their shit. He cries. It's so like touching and gorgeous and very well done. The two of them are so fucking good together. If neither of them are nominated for something from this, I'm gonna be furious because the two of them did so well together. And the way that young Queen Charlotte embodied older Queen Charlotte, like her mannerisms, the way that she talks, like it's so good. And George just being able to like slip into these really difficult moments, fucking spot on. He did a fabulous job. I did see a behind the scenes thing where he was talking about how in this scene where the two of them kind of argue and he admits that he loves her, he was supposed to be walking around, but he had injured himself on set somehow or something. And so he was stationary. And he says, you really can't tell except that there's this moment where the two of them like embrace. And he says, you can see me wobble. And she actually catches me. Like she stops me from falling over because it was like his ankle or his foot or something like that. And then like, sexy things happen. We don't really see it though. Like you see clothes kind of like strewn throughout the observatory and they're on his bed and they're talking and he says, so when are you due essentially? Like when do we get to meet him? And she says, soon. It's soon. And so then he talks to her belly and he's like, hello, little king. It's just like fucking heartbreaking. Lord Ledger. So another walk. Lord Ledger goes out for a walk. Lady Danbury is waiting for him, but Violet is with him. He's putting a stop to it. Basically ending their tryst. So she says, like, I just wanted to thank you for, being there for me when I needed a friend. Lord Bute says that if the king is doing so well, like everyone claims he is, he can give a parliamentary address then. Which,
Oh,
of course,
great. Okay.
everyone who knows what's going on is like, this isn't going to end well.
Yeah.
Present day, Georgie and one of the daughters. We don't really get much of the daughters' names, but they come in to tell Charlotte that she needs to be nicer to them on the children front. Actually, they call it a baby race. Georgie has lost his wife and daughter, and she says all of the girls have lost babies. All of us have lost babies. And Charlotte is like, I didn't know that. You never told me. And they say to her, you have been our queen, but you have never been our mother.
Yeah. Well, that was the same thing with Veronica. Queen Veronica.
With Victoria?
Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria hated being pregnant. She not hated, but she disliked being a mother. But she definitely hated being pregnant. And they had, I don't know, a gaggle of kids too. Bucky, I know.
Gross.
But yeah, the same.
I didn't enjoy being pregnant.
Hi.
I mean, there were certainly fun moments.
Motherhood was not for Victoria, but because, and I think also because she loved.
Hi, Bucky.
She loved Albert so much that like she would do anything for him, and he loved the kids, but she just wasn't. That wasn't her thing.
Well, and
like,
she had to produce an heir, and like if they're going to be banging all the time, like there's no birth control, so
right.
Gotta pull.
And it wasn't Prince. So the one who I remembered has syphilis was actually Prince. It was Queen Victoria's grandson. Oh. Yeah.
Again, no penicillin. No. And if you don't catch it, it goes to your brain.
You get the clap.
Wear a condom, everyone.
Avoid the clap, Jimmy Dugan.
Where are we? So, present day, you have to be nicer to us, blah, blah, blah. Flashbacks again. The Dowager Queen sends a letter to King George, which he reads and promptly rips up. Reynolds, at this point, Reynolds tries to warn Charlotte. He has good days and bad days. And she kind of blows him off. But he's trying to warn her. Just because he's okay right now, because you're here, does not mean he's not going to have more bad days. And she just blows him off and is like, what he needs is me, and I'm here now, and he's well. Everything is fine. She says he needed his wife to get rid of that dreadful doctor. All is well. Oh, so during this discussion, the Dowager Queen says to Charlotte, he is your responsibility now. And I am telling you that there is unrest in Parliament, and he needs to speak to Parliament.
He's not wrong, unfortunately.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong. So Charlotte does tell George, you must address Parliament. We need to return to Buckingham House. So they do. But in present day, Charlotte is talking about her ungrateful, whining children. Queen Charlotte asks Brimsley. This annoyed me. Queen Charlotte asks Brimsley if he ever married. How could she not know the answer to that?
Right. I was just going to say, she's known him how many years? And now she's like, hey, did you ever get married?
I know. And he is a little dumbfounded and kind of stares at her. And is like, I didn't write it down exactly, but I swear he said something like, how would someone like me have married? And I don't know if he was talking about being gay or if he was talking about serving the crown, because he's always with her.
Serving the crown, because it's like a lot of times with housekeepers back then or butlers, they went by Mrs. or Mr. even though they weren't married. Because how could you have a kid? Who, like, how are you going to have
kid? How do you get married?
Right.
And, yeah. Right. And he does say, I've always been with you. There's no time. And I'm
assuming at some point Reynolds is dead.
We don't know what happened to Reynolds. I will get there, but I don't know what happens to Reynolds. I assume he dies at some point. It's not actually spelled out.
Got it.
Going back to flashbacks, George is clearly George is clearly apprehensive to be back at Buckingham House. He actually kind of like hesitates going up the stairs. Lady Danbury and Queen Charlotte have tea. Charlotte asks if Lady Danbury needs anything, but Lady Danbury says no. Again, Charlotte's pretty pregnant. Like, and it's in those gowns, you can't really see a belly.
Yeah.
So it's not like we just know that she's pretty far along because we've been told that she's pretty far along. And you can see like
the bottom of it, yeah.
The very bottom, because like the bodice is there, and then like you
And they
can kind of
still
see
wore
the skirt.
fucking stays. They still wore them. Even blows my mind. Well, I think it was kind of like really great about the Regency era, even though like Empire waists don't look good on anybody.
No, they don't. Not
but
a single fucking person.
Nope. But at least they were wearing the short stays. They were wearing the half stays, the half corsets back then, so they weren't as bad, if any. Some didn't wear them at all, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a note while I'm thinking about it, because this was not discussed in the show, but I saw some analysis where people were speculating that the reason Queen Charlotte in present day is still dressing in that older Georgian style instead of like the more Regency, like what the other women are wearing, is because she's hoping that George will recognize her more if she's still dressed in the old fashion.
Oh, that's fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah, I know. This show
Jesus.
got me. It got me good. So royal physician tells while they're at tea, Charlotte says, the royal physician told me that childbirth would be quick and painless. And Lady Danbury literally laughs and says it's the worst pain imaginable. And then
yeah, get used to it, bitch. Hey, go. It's gonna suck. Yeah,
it's gonna suck. And Charlotte literally, she goes, I knew it. And then there's a second pause, and then she goes, wait, really? And Lady Danbury like backpedals, and she's like, it'll only hurt a little bit.
You know that pain on your wedding night? It's just like that.
But
just like that a little bit. It's a little twist.
Just a little discomfort.
Oh, could you fucking imagine? No, because especially back then, it's like, Jesus, the fact that you might not make it out of it at all. Huh? I wonder if part of that was also like this, honestly, besides the fact that they couldn't, a lot of it was breech births that they couldn't like turn, but also if it was from the stays and the corsets too. Because so many women's, like that area, like was all deformed.
Probably restricted baby movement.
Well, that and there a lot of, you look at some of their hips and everything, they were deformed because they had been wearing corsets even like too early. Anyhow, sorry, random.
Gotta love fashion done by
well,
men.
I mean, at least we weren't binding our feet.
Oh man. Okay, so where was I? Okay, present day. Lady Danbury and Violet are walking, and Violet is like trying to poke around a little bit. She says that she found the birthday hat, because she found the birthday hat, she's suspicious. She's kind of asking about how Lady Danbury like tended to her garden, and like basically saying like, why did you never remarry? Did you take any lovers? Like why didn't you remarry? And Lady Danbury says, Violet, I have loved and I have been loved. And she says, why don't I know about any of this then? And she said, because I am discreet. And Violet said something else, and then Lady Danbury goes, have I ever told you about the Queen's brother Adolphus? And she goes, no. And she goes, because I am discreet. And then she walks away.
Whoa, Lady Danbury's getting on with Adolphus too, huh?
So flashback, we see Lady Danbury talking to Adolphus. And he says, you know, like, can I call on you sometime? He's in town. He's in England because he
He's
has
in
some.
town.
He's in town.
He rolled up in town.
He rolled up into town in the carriage.
He's staying at the local Hilton. It's fine.
That's exactly.
He
He's at
used
the
Uber
hotel,
carriage.
motel, Holiday Inn.
Four Seasons. He's at the Four Seasons. He Uber carriaged over to her place.
So he's around. By the way, I see what shirt you're wearing, and I love it so much. So
I see what shirt you're wearing. Yeah.
But he basically says, like, can I call on you sometime? And she's like, yeah, that would be great. George is trying to write his speech to Parliament. He's very nervous about it. And Charlotte comes in and is talking to him, says, you know, your speech will be great. It'll be totally fine. And then she goes into labor.
Oh, okay. It's be great. Oh my God.
Just by the way,
if baby's like, coming out of my vagina. Yes.
She's basically like, maybe I can offer you a distraction. And I'm pretty sure at first that she's talking about sexy things, but then like she goes into labor. So George is seen like running down the hall, runs into Reynolds and is like, where is the royal physician? She needs opium. She can't do this without opium. And of course, right? Men are not allowed like in the birthing room, right? Like back then. So Reynolds says,
I think that honestly, was that till like the 70s?
Yeah, literally. That's like within the last 50 or so years that became a thing, at least in America. I don't know, like
I don't know if otherwise.
So Reynolds says the physician just got here. He is in with her. Don't worry. So he goes, and to his credit, fucking George, man, like he goes over there and is about to go in the room. But the Archbishop of Canterbury and Lord Bute, that fucker.
Lord Butt. Let's call that Lord Butt. It's Lord Butt.
Lord Butthole. They stop him from going in. And they're like, it's very improper. Gentlemen are not allowed in the room. And so he's like, fine. And so he's kind of like pacing outside of the room. And then Lady Danbury comes out. She's in the room with Charlotte. And she says, she's asking for you. And so he's like, fine. And so he turns around and he starts to walk toward the room again. And the Archbishop of Canterbury blocks him, stands in front of him. And we get this big dick energy move where George says, and I've also seen this on social media, George says, do you like being the Archbishop of Canterbury? And he says, yes. He says, would you like to remain the Archbishop of Canterbury? And he says, yes. And he says, how do you think that this will go for you if you anger the head of the Church of England? And so the Archbishop of Canterbury moves. George goes in the room and like Charlotte, you can hear Charlotte screaming, right? Side note, during this, I was upstairs actually getting ready for this, putting makeup on. And all of a sudden, like the audio just cut out completely. And I was like, what the fuck? I hit pause. And then Mr. Veronica texts me and he goes, well, that was weird. And I was like, what just happened? And he had tried to turn on our portable Bluetooth speaker, which was,
oh my God. It was like screaming through the whole house.
And Mr. Veronica goes, I knew exactly what it was. He was like, but he goes, but you weren't like that.
It's like screencasting porn onto your television.
No. And I was like, oh my God, is little Veronica traumatized? And he goes, no, she's fine. So anyway, he goes straight to her bed, takes her hand. The opposite side is Lady Danbury. And so he's saying to her, like, you are strong. I know you can do this. You're doing great. And you see like bloody towels being like taken.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's going on? And the doctor says the baby is breech.
Yikes. Okay.
And he says, okay, so what do we do? And he says, there's nothing to be done. We just have to wait and see what happens.
And it makes you so angry because you're like, you know what has to be done in the modern age. And yeah.
Don't worry. So George looks at Lady Danbury and says, you've been here before, right? And she says, yes, 4 times. And he says, "Does this look normal to you?" And she says, "There's a lot of blood." And Brimsley, who is facing the window, like he's not facing the room, but he's always with her, is facing the window. He kind of looks over his shoulder and goes, "It is a lot of blood, if I do say so myself." And the doctor says, "I assure you this is all normal.
And this is how women die." Yep.
And George, again, big dick energy on this one. He goes, "Charlotte, I am a farmer, and I know that with horses and with sheep, there are things we can do to help. And I need you to trust me, and we can do this." And he looks at the doctor and he says, "You know exactly what I'm talking about." And he says, "But this is a royal baby." And he says, "I don't care. We will do it. We will try." And so he says to Charlotte, "We need to reposition you. We need to scoot you to the end of the table." And so or to the end of the bed or whatever. And so they're that's the last that we see. We see one last scream from her, and then we see George holding a baby.
So George actually saved the baby.
George saves her and the baby.
Yeah.
Now, again, I don't know how historically accurate that is, but in the show, beautiful. I was just going through memory.
And
there.
The reason they go on to have 14 more kids.
14 more children, or at least 14 more pregnancies. While he's there he's walking around in a room with the baby. He's just kind of doting on this baby and staring at this baby and
Can I ask a question real quick? Because I don't know the answer. In modern day, if it's breech, do they turn it, or do they do C-section, or do they do both?
So they will try one before the other. So typically I should say, when I was pregnant, this is what they told me. That was a few years ago now, whatever. They will try and flip the baby. But usually by getting you to be active, they tell you to go on walks. They're trying to encourage your body to do what it knows it's going to do.
Right.
Yeah. And they can see it. At this point, you're not getting an ultrasound frequently. But you are going in for an examination. In the last month, you're there every week. So the doctor's feeling around. And they can typically tell somehow, they can feel the head and stuff, and they can kind of feel what's going on. At some point, the baby drops.
Right.
And so that's another indication. But if they think the baby is breech, and of course now in a hospital, and if they have any indication that the baby is breech, or they think that something is weird, they'll just strap an ultrasound on you, and they'll just start doing it right there.
I don't know why I asked, because I was modern technology, so I don't know why.
But in some cases, they can try and flip it, and they might do that by pressing on your stomach.
Right.
But if they can't flip it, or they think that it'll be more detrimental to try and flip it, then they will just do a C-section. They're not fucking around with feet coming out first. They're absolutely not, because women die that way.
Yep.
Of course,
and babies die that way too.
Yes, and of course, FYI, in America, we have a pretty significantly high mortality rate. So that's nice.
Sorry to derail.
No, you're fine. So while he's every new dad, holding a baby, walking around a room, staring at his baby, who is the next king of England.
Right.
And I believe her brother is there. The Queen's brother, Adolphus, is there. And his mother is there, of course. And she walks over and she says...
oh, no. She's going to say something cunty, isn't she?
She asks if he is okay, or if there are any signs on this hour-old baby.
Well, my first thought was she's going to say something about his coloring. I'm sure that's what I thought.
Oh, no. That... Surprisingly, no.
Okay.
But he says to her, he is the next king of England. He is perfection. And she looks at him and she says, he is perfection. And then she leaves.
Also, what was he supposed to be doing? Like, sort of, as a 1 year, like 1 hour old, go over and just start writing on the wall and
They
like in
literally
his own
can't see
shit.
anything. They're fucking
Yeah,
blind basically when they're born. Like they
yeah.
see bright lights. Come on. Um Lady Danbury and Adolphus, they go out for a walk together and they see Lord Legend with Violet, like in the park, and she kind of flips out and is like, I'm not feeling well, just like take me home or whatever. Um, Lady Danbury and the Dowager Queen have tea. The Dowager Queen threatens her, and
Great.
Lady Danbury starts sobbing. The Dowager Queen is literally like, "Stop it! Stop that right now!" Of course, she doesn't, because that's not how you speak to someone who is upset. Um,
Right.
but the Dowager Queen like shoos the footman out of the room and then reaches up her skirts and gets a flask out.
Okay, so we're playing it.
And there's apparently pear brandy in there, which she has imported from Germany. And she pours some into Lady Danbury's cup as well as her own. And she basically says to Lady Danbury, it's kind of a moment where you actually gain a little modicum of respect for the Dowager Queen. Because what she says to Lady Danbury is, when my husband died, George II, I was thrown at the mercy of his father, George I, and he was a terrible man. He was horrible to Georgie. I imagine that the abuse, like that George I in the show abused George III
Mm-hmm.
and also abused her because she said Georgie had the bruises and so did I. So she basically says that she did whatever she had to secure her family line, to make sure that George was brought up as well as he could be to be the king, and that she had to secure her own future. And what she says to Lady Danbury is, up until this point, you have been a worthy adversary for me. And then she encourages her essentially to take control of her own fate and says, but do not come in here and cry. Go take control of your own life.
Wow.
And then they essentially get back to the discussion about the line of succession. And Lady Danbury basically tells her, like, my son will be Lord Danbury and I will make sure of it. Like something like that. Like they go back to
Yeah.
this and you get this moment where like the Dowager Queen looks at her and is like clearly like, good job. Again, a modicum of respect. Not a lot though. King George is supposed to give the speech at Parliament. He's clearly very nervous. He sees Charlotte right before. He clearly really wants to see her. She comes in, she calms him down. She tells him that everything will be okay, that he will do a great job. Reynolds he's like, you can see it. He's like, he's not okay. He is not okay. He gets in the carriage. He is like looking over his speech and he starts shaking. He literally slides down to the floor of the carriage and locks the doors and stays on the floor and won't get out of the carriage when they get to Parliament. So Reynolds, when they get back to Buckingham House, they tell Charlotte what has happened. And Reynolds says to her, she was like, he was fine when he left here. And he goes, he was not fine. And he kind of snaps at her. And then he says, my apologies, but he was not fine. He is going to have good days. He is going to have bad days. I tried to warn you. So she asks where he is, and she goes to find him. He's in their room, but she cannot find him. And so she does talk to him, and she follows his voice, and he's under the bed. He's literally laying under the bed. And so she joins him under the bed and lays, I know. And he says, the heavens cannot find me here. He tells her, I will be here sometimes and others not. You can leave me and I will not fault you. It's okay. And she's like, of course I'm not leaving you. He says, I am half a king. I am half a man. You deserve more than that. And she says, if what we have is half, it will be the very best half. And together we will be whole. It's so fucking sweet. Like, it's painful, but very sweet. We end up cutting to Adolphus, who asks Lady Danbury to return home with him as his wife. Present day. Violet is gearing up to confront Lady Danbury. She asks the maids to find all the boxes that contain the birthday hats from her father's house, and to tell the cook that she's inviting Lady Danbury to tea on Friday. Back to the flashbacks. Lord Bute and What's His Nuts, I have no idea who this other dude is. I just started calling him What's His Nuts, are grilling the Dowager Queen as to what the fuck is going on with the king. But Charlotte and King George decide that they will have a ball to announce the baby, because while they're under the bed, he says to her, like, I can't even address Parliament. That's my job. I can't even talk to Parliament. And she says, if you cannot go to Parliament, perhaps we should bring Parliament here. It's time to open the doors to Buckingham House. And so they tell Lord Bute and What's His Nuts that they're going to have a ball to like essentially introduce or welcome the new baby. Of course, the baby won't be in attendance, but like, you know, whatever. Reynolds is very nervous that this will be happening, clearly. Charlotte is in this fucking beautiful blue gown. Gorgeous. Absolutely amazing. They're standing in front of the royal portrait that he was not there for. He was added later because he did not sit for the portrait. And he is feeling down about that like he couldn't even sit for this portrait. And he reaches up to touch her face, but his hand is shaking. And so she takes his hand and holds it in both of hers. And in that moment, like, Reynolds starts to step forward, but he stops because Charlotte is able to calm him down. They get to the top of the steps. They're announced. And there's like this moment where you're kind of like, holy shit, is he not even going to walk down the stairs? And he nearly freaks out at the top of the steps. But she calms him down and says, it's just me and you. What we're going to do is turn around and we're going to wave and smile. And then we're going to go down and we're going to dance. So she gets him down the stairs. She gets him to the dance floor, and he kind of shakes his head at her when they get onto the dance floor. He's looking around. There's all these people. And she looks at him and she says, there's no one here but you and me. Don't look at them. It is only you and me. And so he focuses on her. And then we get this song. I'm not sure if you've heard this song, but it's by, I believe the name, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it might be Za. But the name of the performer is SZA. And it's a song called Nobody Gets Me. It's very good.
Yeah. SZA.
You know what I'm talking about? SZA. Okay, thank you. I'm with it. I'm a cool mom.
I know a friend of mine, her daughter went to see SZA in Columbus recently. Yeah.
Her voice is fucking incredible.
I've not heard her at all. I know the name. That's yeah.
Look it up. Her voice is fucking amazing. I don't know what's real and what's doctored, but gorgeous. So they dance. It's very cute. They get a beautiful little kiss at the end. In the meantime, Adolphus is talking to Lady Danbury and is like, are you, can you please,
are you in or out? Yeah.
Or in or out. Yeah. And he says to her, I need an heir. You are still young enough to have babies. I will take your existing Danbury children in as my own, but I still need an heir. And that's kind of when she starts to like really not get interested in this idea. And she says, I am just now learning. I have already been married. I am just now learning what it is like to live without breathing his air. I don't want to have more children, and I do not want to get married again. And amidst all of this, she's thinking to herself, I need to secure my children's line.
Right. Right.
So she makes a decision. I think surely she doesn't want to get married again, but I think that also she does not want, she would have to move to Germany. Her sons, like what happens to Lord Danbury at that point? What happens to Dominic's inheritance?
Right. Right.
So she turns him down. Dowager Queen tells Charlotte that she has only ever wanted George to be happy. And Charlotte says he is happy. And she says, you make him happy. And then she thanks her for making him happy and walks away. It's very cute. George and Charlotte dance one more time together. They dance to the instrumental version of I Will Always Love You. It's fucking beautiful. It's a really, really beautiful last moment. While they're dancing, though, we get this gorgeous cut to Reynolds and Brimsley dancing, like in the garden where no one can see them.
Oh,
it's so cute. And during that dance, I've seen this part online, but during this dance, we get a cut to Brimsley in present day, and he's dancing alone, as if he's still dancing with Reynolds. So at this point, like, Reynolds is no longer around, but you don't know what happened to him.
why? Yeah,
I assume he died.
looked. Yeah, I looked, and there's no plans for season 2. So
I don't think that it wouldn't make sense to do it. It wouldn't need to be.
Yeah. Yeah, because we need to get further into his fucking psychosis and make it even just more sad.
Please don't.
Like,
please don't. Okay, so we stay in present day for a second here. Edward and Victoria show up to Buckingham House, I assume is where she is. Victoria's pregnant. So in this moment we start to really see very human Charlotte for the rest of present day Queen Charlotte. She is so happy that Victoria is pregnant. They have waited, apparently. Like Victoria says, we waited to tell you until we knew we were sure. So like it says she's further along. She's not showing based on her outfit, but she's far enough along to know that she is pregnant. Probably, I'm guessing.
Victoria.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless she had other kids that didn't make it.
Yeah, no, it would have to be Victoria because it has to be the firstborn. And it can't be a boy. So we assume, I guess I assume by modern standards, like she's probably out of the first trimester. Like that's kind of how I look at it. Charlotte hugs Edward, kisses both of his cheeks, is so overjoyed, so happy. Like to the point where Edward is like, what do I even do here? Like
How do I handle this?
Like they show him very like slowly putting his arms around her back to hug her because like this is the first time his mother has probably ever hugged him.
Did your mother never love you? No, she didn't.
No. Thanks for asking. But it's the first motherly moment we really get. And earlier in the episode, she had been trying to convince Brimley that she had been a good mother. Like he was like, sure. But yeah, so she's very grateful that she's that there is an heir to continue her husband's line. But we go back to the party flashback. Queen Charlotte is Lady Danbury is leaving, and Queen Charlotte like accosts her on the way out and is real pissed and is like, you turned my brother down. He has many faults, but he is a good person. What the hell? And the thing is, like, you learn very quickly that she's not actually mad that she turned her brother down. She's mad because she knows about the succession issues. And Lady Danbury did not ask her, did not bring that issue to her. And she's upset that she didn't. So what she says is, Lady Danbury is like, I couldn't ask you with the problems that you already have. And Charlotte says, we are one crown. His weight is mine. Mine is his. One crown. And she says, turn your fear into faith. Come to us with your concerns. So Charlotte is going to make sure that line is kept. And we know it is. Like, she's still Lady Danbury, right?
Right.
We get one last shot at this party where Charlotte, George is trying to get Reynolds to like imbibe, like to have a drink because he never lets loose. And he's like, no, I can't, because you are my responsibility at all times. I'm not drinking.
Right.
So then he's like, Charlotte, have a drink with me. And she says, I can't. And, or I'm not going to. And he's like, come on, like, isn't anyone going to have a drink with me? And she's like, just not for a bit, but I will again. And so Charlotte's pregnant again. And then we get this like really beautiful, like final kissing scene, like, you know, camera pans up. It's beautiful. And then we go to present day and we stay there. Violet and Lady Danbury are having tea. All the birthday hats are out. They kind of like, they address it, but they don't. Violet is like, I'm going to pack them away. I just wanted them all to be out for a little bit before I pack them away and like, you know, put them
and show them
away.
to you. Show them in your face.
Show them to you. And Lady Danbury is like, oh, why are you packing them away? And she's like, they hold so many memories. And Violet and Lady Danbury like lock eyes.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that Lady Danbury knows that Violet knows.
But I mean, also Violet knows like her mom's a huge bitch, I would assume.
Yeah, I would assume. And also they're both dead, you know? So like, but I will say it does not seem like it's going to be a thing. Lady Danbury is like, she says like Violet, and then Violet, they somehow decide like maybe Lady Danbury tells her like you should keep the hats out because they're happy memories or something like that. And then the two of them sit down for tea. Like, so it's clear that like
they know, but it's an unspoken.
Know, but it's not, they're not going to make a big deal about it. Queen Charlotte is going to visit George, I think at Kew. I think he's still at Kew, like present day. This is the first we see of George, of present day George in the entire series. He's drawing
his name is John Fleet. I think his name is, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, that's the name of the actor?
Yep. He's been in a ton of stuff, like a lot of Jane Austen.
He looks familiar.
He was in can't trying to think of the David Tennant movie that I love him in. Oh shoot, I can't think of it right now. Keep going. I'll figure it out.
Okay. So this is the final scene, essentially.
Okay. Okay.
This is the first we see of George. He is drawing on the wall, and she cannot get him to pay attention to her. So she goes around to the side of the bed, and he sees her out of the corner of his eye, and he looks over, and then she drops down like behind the bed and gets under the bed. And she calls to him, and she says, just George, Farmer George. And he kneels down and like looks under the bed, and she says, come, hide from the heavens with me. So he rolls under the bed. And she says, I have great news. Tells him about Victoria being pregnant. And he's like, oh, she says, you know, Edmund will be a dad. And he's like, Edmund being a father. Crazy, you know?
Like it's a lucid day for him. Sort of, kind of.
In this moment, when he sees her, he knows he knows who she is. And he calls her by name. He says, Charlotte. And she says, hi, George. When they're under the bed together, he knows what's going on.
Okay.
She says, your line will live on. And it's a moment that is repeated from the party. There, she says, like, she is pregnant again, and she says, your line will live on. And he says, our line. And so they're under the bed, and she says, "Your line will live on." And he says, "Our line." Um, and then I honestly, like, at this point, I was like, I cannot cry because I just put makeup on my face. But if I did not just put makeup on my face, I would have been a blubbering fucking mess, because then, like, beautiful cinematic work, honestly, of the two of them under this bed, where um when the camera cuts back to him, it's young George, and he thanks her. And it cuts back to her. She's older Charlotte, and she says thank you, and they have this cute little kiss under the bed. It's really fucking beautiful. um and he says, "Fancy meeting you here." And she kind of like giggles, like she laughs, and it's very girl like. And like I said, like, you get this glimpse of young Charlotte back in older Charlotte, where you see the two of them and how they were together, and you
Yeah.
can still feel that chemistry with the two of them. And God, this is when I was like, I'm almost crying just thinking about it. He says, "You did not go over the wall." She says, "No, George, I did not go over the wall." And then it's his point of view looking at her, and she's young Charlotte, and then it's her point of view looking at him, and he's young George. And then the last shot is like their feet under the bed. And it's so
I'm tearing
sweet.
up.
Like, I don't have any tissues anywhere near me. But that's it. It was honestly, like, beautiful. Like, legit beautiful.
Well, I was gonna ask, did you like it?
Oh my God. It's very good. It's very good.
Yeah, I mean, I knew, like, after the first episode, as you're retelling, I'm like, well, I'm obviously going to be watching this. Like, duh. Like,
it's so good. And I think, much like any other Shonda show, the characters are very well developed.
right.
You're rooting for some people, you hate others. You learn that even the villains have reasons for the things that they do. It's a very well told story. I don't want to read it. I would rather just watch it.
Well, from what it sounds like, they just took the freaking
Yeah, it sounds like it's literally the
script and
script. Like, it's
right.
not. I don't want that.
Yeah.
But it is beautiful. This was not, like, I mean, like we were just saying, this was not an original part of like the Bridgerton series. This was created from the fans' reactions and interest in Charlotte and George.
And I think and I think they probably, I would assume, I would hope they had enough. They had enough historical, like, researchers on hand to help with the story that it actually blends really well and it works really well here.
Yeah, I think it felt very well researched. Of course, like, just, this is still Bridgerton, right? It is
Right.
beautiful. It is
Yeah.
gorgeous. The opening credits, you know how like in season 1 of Bridgerton they were like all those flowers or whatever.
Yes.
This time it's animated silhouettes of Charlotte, like, in gowns walking through hallways and stuff. And it's shorter, it's very cute,
Yeah.
and elegant, frankly. I mean, I guess it's cute is probably not the right word. It's quite elegant.
Because she's the queen, so it's got to be a little bit. You have to step it up a little bit with
Yeah.
costuming and everything. Yeah.
And like, I mean, visually it's beautiful. But the costumes, like, wardrobe, hit it out of the goddamn park. And her, especially with her hair and the crowns that they put on her, because with her hair being huge like that, and it's mirrored in present day Charlotte, where like she has these huge wigs,
Yeah.
and then like these crowns that kind of like come up and like sit in it and up. Very
Mm-hmm.
similar to how they do it with young Charlotte, with like, you wouldn't be able to like put a crown, like a round crown,
Right.
on that. So you need
like
to
Bart Simpson with like a little tiny
so
crown.
yes, exactly. So they really incorporated that well, where like she gets these like tall tiaras that sit in
Yeah.
front of her hair. It's beautiful. I mean, truly, they did a fucking great job with this show. And I was
Let's
very skeptical and was probably not, I wasn't thinking about watching this, but damn.
All right. Let's do ratings like we do with the books
Okay.
on here. So how we rate things on the show is eggplants and hearts. Eggplants for how sexy was it? Hearts, how romantical was it? So out of a 5 eggplant scale, how steamy was this show?
Uh, I mean, I would say it's like a solid 3. You get like some hot moments and some other moments, like very bland, boring sex that clearly only one person is enjoying. But like the man butt, nice, not turning it down. But it's not like if we classify. Okay, so like if we classify season 1 of Bridgerton as like probably a 5, honestly,
Yeah, like on a scale. Well, I mean, yeah, like
maybe
on.
4.5. Like,
Well, I mean, there's not like I get it's a tough one because like for on B3, I would say season 1 would have been like probably a 3
really?
for film like because we don't have any like we don't see a vagina. We don't see like
Well, no. We
I mean it's
see.
just because there's full out porn. So I mean I guess that's kind of how you have to think about it on
Okay.
this scale.
All right. So maybe like I don't know, maybe like a 2.5. But I mean, the parts that are hot are hot. It's
Right.
like so maybe 2.5.
Okay. Okay. Because I would put season 2 at a 1.5 to 2.
Yeah, I would say like probably yeah, probably 1.5 for season 2 because like again, like you really only get like one sex scene and it's
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think for like because we say like sex and nudity, so like
Hmm.
yeah.
You get a lot of like Jonathan Bailey butt, but you know, like
Butt Biters Anonymous. Yep. Um, Butt Biters Association of the World.
you
All right.
get 3 man butts, different man butts in this. I think so.
Love that.
George, you get George, and then you get Reynolds. Oh, and a little bit of you don't get a full Brimsley butt, but you get some of it. So, um, and then Lord Ledger.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay, how romantical was this?
I, I mean, This is a fucking 5. The love that Charlotte has for George and the way he loves her back. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but damn. Like that's the kind of love that literally anyone would want for themselves. To like have someone do anything possible for you. And while his decisions aren't necessarily the best decisions, he thinks he's doing what is best for her.
Um, would this embarrass our mothers?
That's a
I'm
really
sure.
good question.
I'm honestly going to recommend it to my mom.
I would recommend it to my mom.
She like
More
I don't know if she saw
so.
the second season, but I know she watched the first season.
Oh, you do. I forget. You do get one scene. Charlotte is still like she's partially undressed, but is still covered. He goes down on her.
All right.
Yep. Anyway, that's while they're having hate sex. You see that. So, I would recommend it.
Yeah. Okay.
I would recommend it to my mom. I would not recommend season 1 of Bridgerton to my mom. I would recommend this.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
like, yeah.
it's emotional, but like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know that it would embarrass them. You could see man butt, whatever.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah.
So we just released an episode this past week. We are gearing up to, which we have to iron out some details with
Yes,
the
we
author
do.
in question.
We do.
We don't necessarily need to do it on that night, but we need to do it at some point. But we will be doing Authors You Should Know month. We're starting that month. Because of Bridgerton, actually.
Yep.
Because we try to like do it around Bridgerton because we know that a lot of people will be looking for people's
Bridgerton
takes on
things.
Bridgerton. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and since this is the Bridgerton we're going to get this year, probably, we assume that we're not going to get Bridgerton season 3 till next year.
Yeah.
This is where we're at. So we have coming up E.L. Coslow's Burn for It.
Feeling the Burn, I think.
Feeling the Burn. I know we said it 2 different ways.
I know. I think it's Feeling the Burn.
Feeling the Burn. It is a Galatea. Galatea, whatever, how you want to say it. However the proper way of saying it is. Yeah, so that's coming up, and we're actually going to speak with EL, so we're very excited. We've known her for a little while here, but we actually get to see her face to face, and it's going to be fun.
Super excited.
Super excited. We love her work. If you've not seen, not read the Words series.
Oh, I think it's Dirty Words. But yeah, she has foreplay on Words up for pre-order right now.
Yeah, because it's a re-release. We've read almost all of them, I believe, at this point. They're awesome.
3 at least.
Yeah.
I will reread them. I know she's making some changes, and I will reread them. It's fine with me.
They are steamy as fuck. So if you were looking for some steamy reads.
Oh yes. And well researched.
Bound by Words is super fucking
that book
steamy.
Was hot as fuck. They're all hot. Like,
yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, there's some if I remember correctly, there's at least some spanking, I think, in Mark My Words, but
I think so. I think there's some in foreplay as well.
Oh, there's a lot of everything in foreplay. And foreplay. On foreplay, yeah, there is, because they're getting into the scene. A lot of this plays around in, or like takes place in sort of the dominatrix, like the S&M scene. So if that's you like that, this is right up your alley, man.
I believe how we described the first book, Foreplay on Words, was if 50 Shades were actually well researched
and written and well written.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't read 50 Shades because I don't want to. But I read this.
I did. Yeah,
I know you did.
I did. I read both, and I can tell you quite equivocaally, this is way better.
Yes. So if you liked 50 Shades, read this. It's way better.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you, we're going to also release this as a podcast, also on the podcast. So it'll be an audio, but also a visual, video of it. If you like, you're on our YouTube at this point looking at this. So why don't you go check out some of the other reviews? So. All right. How do we end this thing?
Oh, God. In the most obnoxious way possible. And we need to, because it's fucking late.
It is 1 o'clock. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Harmony.
Oh, my God.
Ah.